As the man pops the top on the
Cheers.
bottle, we do kick off episode number 21 of the Over the Hill podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it's come on
You've
leaps
been
and bounds.
grafting.
Mate, it's ridiculous. Like, it's one of them ones where like I only ever meant to do it as, try it and see what happens. And I've done the first couple of episodes on the first weekend, and then it's just like the amount of people that have come out of the woodwork that have just been like, yeah, let's do a show, and then someone like yourself who I haven't seen for so long comes along. I'm like, oh, let me get Steve on first before I do that one. And so episode 21, special guest, the one and only Steve Williams, someone who I haven't seen, as I say, for the best part of a decade now, but someone who was a massive part of my career as a DJ. Yeah, someone who's a massive part of my career as a DJ, and same for a lot of people as well. Ran one of the most successful radio stations coming out of West London, Ice Cold FM, which later became Image Radio. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But mate, first of all, good to see you after all these years. Thank you so much for coming on. How's life treating you?
Likewise, Jay, man. It's good to see your face. You're looking well. Life is treating me all right. Yeah, life is busy. 2 kids, grafting and all that. But yeah, doing all right.
Good, mate. Good. So let's get into it. Early influences for you, and sort of what got you into loving underground music and the radio scene.
Music lover from a very young age, and I remember listening to my dad, slightly drunk when he come in from the pub, cracking out Whitney Houston's and things like that, and kind of like that disco-y vibe, and him singing along. And I just used to love music, and as I kind of got into my mid-teens, it became more part of my life. I used to listen to hip hop and rap quite a lot in the early 90s. And then that kind of transcended into like a more UK sound. So it was like the hardcore scene was sort of early 90s, 91, 92. And I was kind of just about old enough. So I was like 15, 14, 15. And I could kind of access that music. I wasn't constrained by, just life. I really got into like a lot of hardcore, a lot of pals at school and all that were quite heavily into the kind of dance scene. And it just grew and grew from there. Like I was immersed in music from a very young age, like playing instruments, 10, 11, 12, learned to play guitar, then learned to play the drums, got a drum kit. God bless my mother for that one. She put up with me making a right racket in the bedroom. And just, massive influence, always just loved music. It was like home for me. It was just where I felt comfortable in the music scene. So got into a lot of hardcore and started to kind of go to a few parties and raves, mostly on the outskirts of London. So like Lyd Airport down in Kent, Roller Express, Lee Valley, Sanctuary, Milton Keynes, and numerous other little kind of in the field parties and warehouse parties around West London. Park Royal was pretty well known for some warehouse parties back in the sort of mid to late 90s. I was just really into that. And a few of the guys at school were talking about, how their older brothers had decks and whatnot. And one of them, a lad called Ross, if I remember rightly. He had like a friend or his brother or cousin, it's hard to remember so many years ago. He played on a station which I think was an offshoot of Dream, which was called Global. It was Dream or Trance, I can't remember back in the day. And we were all listening to pirate radio as well. So, I've heard lots of your guys talk about Don FM, Trance FM, Touchdown, Green Apple, Red Eye, Weekend Rush, Defection, Cool. And we just immersed ourselves in that music. And like I say, one of my schoolmates had a friend who was playing on a radio station. I'm pretty sure it was Global. And we went around his house and we started playing some tunes. And I was really kind of engrossed. But his brother was like, he was stush. He was like, "You ain't touching my decks. These are my like 1200s. No one touches these apart from me." So we didn't even get a look in, but we just sort of sat there and watched him do his thing. And then I just kind of thought, you know what, I need to get into this. So I sold my drum kit, worked tough, doing the stuff you do at 14, 15 paper rounds, working in shops, doing a bit of this and that to get money. And I luckily had someone that was selling a pair of Technics, and I don't think he realised the value of them because he let me have the pair for like 600 quid. And they came with autophone styluses on them, like Concord styluses. and they were like 200 quid in themselves. So I got them. After having actually stepped back, I actually had some. Oh, should I tell this story? Yeah, fuck it, why not? I actually started with. They were either a Waya or Sony tape players, but they had like speed control on them. Right, so you could adjust the speed of the tape. And I whacked them into like, I had 2 of them. I bought them for like 30 quid out of Tandy or Argos or somewhere like that. Plugged them into a mixer. Trying to do mixing on tape is just a fail. And I was like, no, I can't be doing this. This ain't working. Managed to get one cheap turntable, which had a rotary. I think it was an original Technic, but it was battered, and it was a rotary pitch control. So you know, this, and I had one of them, and so I had one deck, and I had one tape. And then I invested in like another, again, it may have been Tandy or Record Shack, some kind of, you know, bottom of the range turntable. Again, it had like a pitch control on it. And I just started trying to get some records. And I won't lie, I was going to Woolworths buying like 7-inch records of dance tunes that were in the charts just to try and throw mixes together and things like that. And yeah, it just kind of evolved, and I wouldn't let it go. So I worked, managed to buy these 1210s, got a Gemini mixer off of, I don't even think it'd be Gumtree, but you know, I think it was Exchange and Mark.
Okay.
So it was, so that's, or what was the other thing? Loot. Was it Loot?
Yeah, Loot, yeah.
I think I bought a cheap mixer, and oh my God, the mixer, I had 2 1210s, like pretty good autophone, and I had this Gemini mixer, which was black and green. I remember it, but you could barely see any black and green because all the paintwork had been scratched off of it. Now, when I say, you know, you've been on radio, you've done radio, so you've experienced it. You know what faders are like in radio stations, yeah? These faders, they made more crackle than they did sound. Yeah, they just crunch, crunch, crunch. Nothing a bit of WD-40 couldn't fix for, you know, to keep me entertained. And I was away and just started buying tunes, sort of like 15, so 16, so it's going to be like 93. Started getting into it. And then I was like, where can I go to start getting records? Because there wasn't really many record shops around in the manor, sort of like Ealing, Acton, West London Way. But there was one record shop that I'd heard mentioned, I think it might have been on Dream around that time, I think it might have been Dream, called Lucky Spin. And Lucky Spin was down in Kings Road in Chelsea. It was at the back of a clothes shop. And yeah, I just started going there, picking up tunes and trying to mix, and I'll be honest, I was pretty shit. I won't lie. It took a while to get it down, but as I started kind of practicing more and learning, I kind of started learning beat matching and, you know, understanding what tunes work. But it wasn't until I met a neighbour a couple of roads up the road from me, a lad called Justin, safest geezer, and it was actually his missus used to babysit my little sister. From time to time when my mum was working. So my mum was like, go get your sister from Justin Moore's house and bring her back because, you know, I'm home now. So I went round there, picked her up, and I could hear like kind of quite hard house music banging out from the bedroom. And I was like, so I peered through the window and I could see Justin on the decks, like, and he had big speakers. He was like proper pumping it out. And Maud answered the door and she was like, hello, Steve. And I was just transfixed on watching him do his thing. Like, she's saying, Steve. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm here to pick my sister up. And so I came in the house, and normally, like, you just grab your sister and you'd be off. But like, I was just like peering around the door, like, you know, what's the crack? And then Paul said, go in if you want to have a look. And he took me into the room, and I just sat there and watched him play, and he was a really good house, like a bit more hard house, not what progressive house, but sort of mid-90s, there was a thing called hard house, which was a bit more pumping. But he was a wicked DJ. He used to play at like Grazing Road, the Sunday clubs in Grazing Road, and what I think is now, was it the Massive Bricks in the Church in the basement?
Yeah.
He used to play in there and stuff like that. And he was a decent little DJ, Justin was. So anyway, kind of sat and watched him, and then he started talking to me, and he, you know, you could see I was blushing because I was like, oh, I really want to know what's going on. And he sat with me, and he he kind of honed me and taught me a little bit about, you know, thinking about how you're playing your music and what you're doing. It kind of probably all went over my head at the time because I was like 15 years old and just wanted to spin music. But I remember one thing he did for me, which changed everything in terms of just kind of mixing and being on point with beat matching in terms of like DJing. He gave me 2 copies that he had of D Pattern on Hard Hands Records, who's a bad man. And he gave me 2 copies of it, and he just said, now you've got your techniques, just play them 2 tunes and just learn your 1, 2, 3, 4s. Don't worry about all the fancy stuff, breaks and drops and trying to make these perfect mixes, just beat match. So that was it. Like once he started showing me and he gave me a bit of tuition, I was on my way. And yeah, the journey didn't really stop until, well, yeah, 10 years ago, like you say. So like, so I was in my mid-30s. So yeah, that's where it kind of all started. And then like, it was about 16 years old. And obviously people would talk, pirate was a big part of a lot of people's lives, you know, mid-90s. It was massive. Everywhere had a pirate. And I was trying to get on and seeing friends who had any like links. And there was a few people I knew that were kind of playing on stations. But I thought, you know, F it. I'm going to do this myself. Now, I'm living in my mum's house. I'm 16 years old, 70 years old now. And I'm like, oh, this can't be that hard, you know, it's transmitter like. And I used to have a CB radio. I don't know if anyone remembers CB radios, but it's like, it can't be that hard to get a transmitter, like, boom, boom. So again, I think it was something like the Exchange of Mart or the Loop, because the internet weren't around in them days. I found an advert for, what was it called? It wasn't Energy. Veronica FM. I think it was a guy called Steve who used to run it, and he used to sell broadcast equipment, like transmitters, but they were all quite low powered, and he used to do like, you know, community stations, nothing like the big stations. But you could buy like a 4-watt transmitter off him and one of these aerials. It was like 150 quid. So I remember, again, you know, saving up a bit of change, postage and packaging, mate, you know, on the phone to his missus, who sounded like a proper old dear as well in reflection. I think he was quite an old boy. Ordered my 4-watt rig, yeah, and my Slim Jim antenna and 10 meters of coax, and stuck it out my bedroom window. Like, turned the transmitter on, found a frequency, and stuck it out my window. And it kind of, I used to just switch it on every now and then and just have a little mix through it. And I wouldn't even touch the mic because I was scared of talking on the mic when, back in the day. I did that for like a year or 2, and then the jungle scene started to get quite big. I've kind of naturally just moved into that and started going to raves, Islands, Ilford, Bagley's, slamming vinyls and things like that, Desire, all them kind of raves, just traveling around with the boys doing our things, sort of 17 now. And then, yeah, I used to just turn the transmitter on that I had, this little 4-watt thing. I remember it. I put it into a shoebox, cut some holes in it so I could see the lights flashing and all that. And I remember when I bought it, I didn't buy a power supply. This is how funny it was, yeah? And you needed like a 13.8 power supply, right, you know, to power it. I didn't have anything. So I was like ripping like old adapters apart from like anything I could find to see if I could get it to turn on, and it just weren't having it. So in the end, I saw one of my mates around the corner, his car had been sitting there for months. I said, what's his name? Is it D? And I just said, can I just nick your car battery? Because apparently a car battery will work. So I just took the car battery out of his car because it was sitting there, stuck it on the charger, and that was me. I was on 4 watts from a 2nd floor flat in my mum's house in Acton.
How far was it getting? Did it get past the end of the road?
So surprising enough, right? My house where I used to live with my mum was on a little bit of a hill. It wasn't a big hill, but it kind of, it bridged. It's a funny story because I remember when you were talking to Ricky, I remember when I talked to Ricky. So I was, first of all, I put the transmitter on like 107.3 or something like that. And I think it was a time, so again, years blur slightly because it's a long time ago. But I remember a station called Transmission 1 used to be on from Grove, Latimer. And I think they used to be on 107.3, 107.4 or something like that. And And I stuck the transmitter on 107.3, and I remember getting a call from someone, I think it might have been Mugwire or someone like that, saying, just turn that shit off now, bruv. Like, the transmission one had been long gone. They hadn't been on for a long time. Or maybe not a long time, but, you know, a few months. And I just thought, it's a dial, turn it on. And I remember doing it. I remember getting a phone call and thinking, right, they're going to come to my mum's house. I don't want none of this, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, you know what, turn it off, find another dial. I think I moved it to like 94 or 94.2, or I can't remember. It's a long time ago. And I remember Ricky actually phoned me out of the blue. I think mobile phones had just become a thing. I'm sure it was a phone. He phoned me from his gaff he was in Fulham at the time. And I was like, what? You're picking me up in Fulham on 4 watts from my little second floor flat? And I was well happy with that. I thought, I'm done. I'm finished, game over. You know, everybody out. We're cool. I'm living a dream. I remember him phoning me and I was just like, wow. Because I kind of have heard of Ricky's name before, I think from Flex. So I kind of, well, that's someone known in the scene's picked it up. You know, it's doing my thing. But anyway, long story short, like that kind of, I did my thing, and like life was just too much fun. So there's too much partying going on, going out raving, you know, just, I couldn't take it seriously. But DJing was still serious. And although I was still playing like a lot of jungle and early drum and bass, I started to get into the garage scene as well. I think, again, that was around the time Ricky must have switched on Ice. Because I remember it being on, I think, 98, 97 originally. Getting into that, and like it blew, and I thought, yeah, I'm feeling this as well. It was a nice vibe. Jungle had got a bit dark and a bit like you were wary of any rave you went to, whether you'd be coming home at times, you know. I think like a couple of weeks before I was at Ireland and Ilford before it all, I don't remember if you remember that, like 96, 97, like it proper went off, people died, you know, gunshots going off, it was shut the club down and all that. It got a bit too dark for 70-year-old boys to be leaving West London to go to the deepest, darkest depths of East to go raving. Although we had some mad times, Stratford Rex and all that sort of stuff. Labyrinth, Four Aces, Dalston, some great raves. But anyway, the garage scene kind of come along and started to get quite big. And I got into that, started buying records. There was a couple of shops in Ealing. So there was, what was the one in Northfields Road in Ealing, Northfields Avenue? I should really remember it. Before Cage Records in West Ealing. Normski used to work in there.
See, I don't really know. I never really knew Acton or Ealing at all, even as an adult, until I joined Ice Cold.
Right. So yeah. So anyway, I'll speed it up because I know these things. I will turn into Henny otherwise. Big up Henny, by the way. God bless you. It was great to speak to you the other day, man. I'm glad he's doing well. He made me reminisce a lot. So anyway, got into garage, blah, blah, blah. And I just wanted to get myself out there. Before everything else, jungle, drum bass, it was just about me learning and enjoying music in my own company, sharing tapes with pals and all that. But when the garage scene started to blow, I was like, yeah, I need to be in this. And I had a nightclub. There was a nightclub at the top in Ealing, Broadway Boulevard, Rock Caf, up in Ealing. And it was like probably one of the best clubs in West London at the time. I remember that place used to just be heaving like ridiculous. And I remember hassling the guy that was doing the promoting. I think I went in there one night and just kind of, someone said, I think that's the geezer that does all the promoting and that. So I found out his name, Nigel, and I phoned the club during the week because I was like, I'm on this. Like, I need to start taking this serious and starting gigging. And people said to me, like, you're decent, you're a good DJ, you beat match, you know, had all the good tunes, had built a good relationship with the guys at the record shop. It really annoys me, I can't remember it. But like, you know, the under the counter stuff was coming because I was spending a bit of dough there, you know, and I'm talking maybe 40, £50 a week. And I spend tunes were only like three, £4 still. So, you know, I was spending a fair bit of dough. So I had everything that I needed to have to do it right. I can remember phoning this guy, Nigel, and I phoned him and I said, look, just give me a set, give me a chance, let me do it. And he just kept on kind of palming me off, which is fine because, you know, I was a nobody, to truth be told. And I said, what do I have to do to get a gig? Do I have to hire the club to get a gig here to show you I'm serious? And he went, if you hire the club, I'll give you a gig. I was like, okay, when can I have the club? And he said, I can't give you the whole club because that's 1,200 capacity thingy. So he said, I'll give you the rock calf, and I'll give you the rock calf on a Tuesday or Thursday night. And the rock calf held about 200-300 people. So I said, do it. If it proves to you that I'm serious and I'm on this, then let's do it. So I took the club and kind of just put some feelers out there for anyone that could maybe help me. And there was a couple of guys that said, I can help you with flyers, I can help you with this, help me with that. So I put the night on, I think it was called Underground Flavors. And it was kind of mainly garage and house music at the time. And actually, it wasn't heaving, but there was a good 200 people in there. And Nigel came down, he was like, all right, you're serious, yeah? You're serious. So I was like, I told you, man. So he said, look, student night, Tuesday night, come down, do 9 till 11, 12 o'clock, first 3 hours, and then our other DJs would jump on and finish the night. And then that was it. Like, it became more serious from there onwards. So I started doing the Tuesday night there at Boulevard. And first month, 6 weeks, didn't get paid, but I was quite happy to do it for free. Like, I did not care. I was getting to practice on big clubs in big sound systems, 18, 19 years old. I felt proud of myself, and I was like, right, let's do it. And then he started paying me, and he sort of realised I was putting the graft in. I was on point with my tunes. I was practicing hard. And then an opportunity came up to do Saturday night in the Rock Cafe. And Saturday night in the Rock Cafe was a proper little night. Like, it was. We'll touch on Blag later on, I'm sure, because we had some epic nights in there. But it was like Blag, but like full, just rammed, heaving, big sound system in there. Like, it had a stack of speakers across one wall, and yeah, it was just a thumping little club. So yeah, just started gigging a lot more work, getting about and doing my thing. But the radio thing was always kind of like, that would be the next thing to get back into. That would be the way to kind of, get yourself on. And I couldn't really get onto station. I remember trying to get onto Ice, and that was just no chance. And that's fair enough, actually, in truth be told, because everyone was on that station. But I think a guy called Ross Young, I tried Ross Young, he used to work in Boulevard as well. I think he was playing on Ice with Arby. I tried to get on with him. It was just like, just not having it. And probably, as Ricky mentioned in his podcast, I didn't hear it all, but like, they were stush. They weren't just letting anyone up anytime. Yeah. You had to.
He was saying to me, literally, like, if you had like people would say to him, I want to bring a special guest. And he's like, who's your special guest? Like, because if it ain't, if it's not Martin Lana, or it's not this other person, or it's not that, like, if it's just Johnny, your mate Johnny from down the road, or literally in your case, your mate Steve, like, then yeah, he wasn't having it at all. Quality control, obviously, and also, at them times, Ofcom or DTI at them times were definitely on the case for finding gaps, so
they were serious in the mid 90s, like, and late 90s especially, because obviously stations started to blow, and we all know that. I would never say that the stuff that DTI and Ofcom used to try and kind of make pirates look bad was always true. And the 99% of the time, people were doing it for genuinely good music reasons. You always had some people out there that may have used it for their other gains, but the large majority of people, or everyone that I spoke to ever in the radio scene, was always down for the music and showcasing talent, yet maybe making a little bit of money as well, because if you could keep your station on, you got adverts and that, there was some money to make. But most people I knew weren't in it for bad intentions or to promote wrongdoing.
No, we've spoken about that a few times on here, and I've actually said, like, I've come out when I was talking to Outlaw about it. He knows a lot of the people that I know from back in the day. We're from the same area, sort of thing, and I've said to him, like, bruv, as well as I do, like, I've been around people, and Ricky knows some of these people as well. Like, I've been around people that, yeah, they've sold this, they've sold that, they've had this in the boot of their car and that in the boot of their car, but they've had that because that's their life. So I mean, they live that life. They're on, quotes unquote, the roads, as the kids will call it nowadays. Like, that's what it was for them. They weren't. The whole thing that done me was they use radio stations as a network to sell drugs. Like, how in the fuck do you even So every DJ on there is basically either selling for them, or they're some sort of crackhead and they're buying from them.
Yeah.
How's that work?
I remember like all kinds of excuses. Like they have code words when the drugs have landed and all that. And it's like, I never have. And I listened to a lot of stations back in the day. I don't remember hearing like anything that made me worse go, well, that's a bit of a code word for, you know, the weed's in or the pills have arrived. It was just, you know, they could say what they wanted because we were illegal and we had no voice to fight back. So they could pretty much say what they liked about us to bad name us. But again, I think the large majority of people that were into radio were doing it for the music. And things that came from that were kind of after.
Yeah.
So no one actually started a radio station and said, I'm going to make a shitload of money and I'm going to be running the airwaves and I'm going to take over all the clubs. I don't think many stations would have done that. They were all about just, you know, putting the music on, showcasing some talent, get some big names on there and all of that sort of stuff that you want to do as a station. So yeah, I couldn't get onto stations going back to where I just like, it was different and rightly so. And, you know, quality control, like you say, and, you know, the risk of studios with the DTI being as militant as they were, I get it. So again, I just went back to turning my own rig on. And so I did. I still have my little 4-watt thing, but this time I moved it to the blocks. So the blocks, again, Henny alluded to the big blocks in Acton next to the police station, the nice beige one, Rufford Towers. I stuck it up on there and I didn't know how to link. So I got a bit inventive. So I mentioned earlier on, I had CB. Right. So what I had is I used to link over my CB. So I used to key up a channel on the CB radio and I put my mic receiver on my CB radio against the speaker. This wasn't even wiring stuff, bro. This was just like, make it work. And then I had a little handheld CB radio on the block. And so it's like 30, 40 quid's worth of gear. You could buy them anywhere. It's like cheap as chips. So it wasn't really a big cost. And I put the 4-watt rig up on the tower block with an aerial and linked it through a CB radio. Like looking back at that now, that was just crazy, but it worked. It didn't sound great at all, but the block was pretty open, like FB keys. You know, I went to my local locksmith, just picked up a set of FB keys, drop key, and I went, put it up there. And the thing was, there was a station that used to come on legally from that block called Justice Radio, Justice, something like that. And it used to come, the studio used to be in a police station or Southampton next door. So on the roof, they built this nice little box to house all the equipment in for the RSL community station. So I just kind of, well, there was cable there, power was there. I was just like, all right, I'll just go up here, pump it all in this box, a couple of padlocks, away I go. And I just left it up there and I had the power running through a hole to the 21st floor. So I didn't actually have to go to the roof to turn it off. I just flipped the switch off in the electric cupboards, the water pipe rooms for the extinguisher system. So I used to just go out there, you know, it wasn't that late, you know, I was still midnight, you know, bush, just go turn it off. But then one day I went up there, switched it on, had my Walkman or whatever I had with me, and it didn't turn on. So I went up there and it was gone. But that 4-watt rig from that block, I remember, I can't remember if it was a page or a mobile, it must have been mobiles because it was getting near the late 90s. I used to get hits, I mean, sounding really old, from like Isleworth, Brentford, Fulham, Latimer, Kensal, Willesden. So for 4 watts,
mate, that's done all right. That's done all right.
it did get out, and I still didn't have the right power supply for it, which was probably meaning it was probably pushing 2.5, 3 watts at the time, and it did all right. And it got out, but then it kind of got a bit more serious, and I met a couple of guys through some mutual friends that wanted to put on a station. I was like, look, I'm down for getting involved in this. And then we started a station called Blaze FM. Blaze FM was originally on 995. Now, at the time, Upfront was still on, and Upfront were on 993. So we had a fucking expensive studio, really expensive studio. Like, it was ridiculous. It was like £1,000 a month because it was a flat, but it was above Tops Pizza in Acton High Street. So it was like prime real estate in the real world, but it was like, you could see the block. You literally look across the road, boom, block's there. And we set up a rig, we got a rig on 995. We've got all the link stuff through Z. done a rig builder. I won't mention no names. I think it was Z. Going over to East London to get rigs. We set it all up, and he actually said to me when we got the rig, he said, "You know that's going to cause you grief, you know, 905." But at the time, we were all a bit, you know, fuck it. What are they going to do about it? Well, they did. So we got the rig on 995, and literally the second night we put it on, we went up there, and the thing was, it was mad because we went across the road. I remember the studio was 200 yards away from the block. Went up there about midnight to turn it off, maybe 12:15. This is 98 time, 99, roughly. Went across the block, and we were sat downstairs, and we were just like, before we go up, like a couple of guys had blazers in, we'll go up there. So we had a quick smoke. And we did see some people leave the block, and we were like, they kind of left kind of quick. But we'd literally just taken the keys out of the car. So the radio had gone off, and we shut the doors, and we saw these guys make off kind of quick. So we went up to the block, not knowing actually, and the rig had gone. So we were sitting at the block, and there was like 4 of us in the car. We'd gone, you know, a little mob. And yeah, a couple of guys had trawled the rig. Later found out when we switched the next rig on, the upfront phoned, the guy from upfront phoned us and said that it's not running, guys. If you come back on that dial, we're just going to come and keep taking your rigs. But then I'd heard of a thing called carjacking the rigs. So we carjacked the rig down a thing, and they didn't get the rig, but they used to still come and cut the cables and that. But we stayed on for like a good 6 months. I think we stayed on 995, but what we did is we moved further out. So we moved a bit more west. So, and I think we were in Perryville. We were in a business unit in Perryville. So we had to let the studio in Acton go because it was just so much money. And we were only running weekends and occasionally like a Thursday night or a Monday night bank holiday style, whatever. It's just too expensive. Like there wasn't the money to facilitate keeping that studio. So we moved to like some business unit in Perryville, and it was off the North Cirque. And it was right in the dip of North Cirque. So between Hanger Lane and going up towards Wembley, there's a business centre there. And we ran direct from there. We thought, fuck it, come here and get this rig then. And I'll be honest, the guys were ready for a war. I was, you know, I was like, guys, you know, this can get serious. You know, we've all heard the stories of when it goes down, it goes down. And I'd recently heard of some stories of some pretty serious stuff going down in South, which I think you might have touched on again with one of your other guests. I think my Bible might have mentioned it. But yeah, some pretty serious stuff going on down in South London. And so I was just like, you know, like if we go there, we go there. But just, you know, I'm like, just know that it could happen. So anyway, long story short, we stayed on that business unit running direct for about 5 months, but we just weren't getting out, and we weren't getting much from it in terms of like feedback, because we were getting out, like we're probably getting out no more than I was on my 4-watt rig from the Acton block, in truth, like, because it was just in this massive dip, and we had to keep the aerial low because it was bait on this business unit on the North Cirque, which was actually next to, you know, the big Chinese, there's like on the slip road of the North Cirque, there's that Chinese wholesalers. You might know, you might not.
I know. Well,
business unit. There's a business unit about 100 yards up from there. It's only about 7 stories, quite long and narrow. Next, I think it's near the hotel. It's kind of wedged between the wholesalers and the hotel. And we were up there and we're doing our thing, but it just kind of, it faded. You know, the cost of running the station, not really getting out as much as we could. And there was like 6 of us involved in it. So like trying to make good decisions about where we go seemed to get hit with lots of, it wasn't politics. It was just people had different perspective and different ideas. And so in the end, we kind of all just floated away and ended up kind of stopping that station. But it was a good station. Like it had a real good diverse mix of music, some decent DJs on there. And the fire from there was still burning for me. So one of the guys that I was doing Blaze with called Don, and another guy called Logic, Sachi, we kind of were like, you know, let's try and do, you know, Mark II of Blaze FM. So we said, all right, let's do it. We'll go for it. But I said, if we're going to do it, let's do this right. Let's find a decent dial that isn't too hampered, and then we know we're not going to get drama from. Let's find a decent studio. And you've got to remember, decent studio back in the days was a 4-channel mixer, a tape deck for the adverts, or some jingles, or maybe a mini disc player if you were lucky, and 2 turntables and some speakers. So didn't need much to be half decent. But we got a studio in Park Royal. Can't remember the name of the business centre. But another station was also coming from there as well. I think there was 3 or 4 stations. Like a lot of the Harlesden stations came out of that same business centre. Like BFM came out of there, and Street FM came out of there. I think Unique was in there for a bit. Roots FM was in there a bit. So like literally every Harlesden station had used that business centre.
So they're all in the same business centre, and all of their rigs are all
one in as well.
They're all on the same set of shops on the same street in Harlesden as well.
Yeah, on where the clock tower is. Yeah, on a big scaffolding. So they're all sitting up there. They're all band one in from this industrial estate. I think there was only 2 of them at a time. I think it was Beat at the time and Street FM. I know Street FM was definitely in there because me and DJ P from Street kind of started to help each other out a little bit because we were ready for it. So anyway, we got the studio sorted. We got some rigs. So we, back in the days, like we was probably only like 19, 20, 21 maybe now. We invested in rigs hard. Like we bought 8 of them. Like we were on this, like I think we spent like $2,500 on the rigs. Like we went in because I was like, if we're gonna do this, guys, being on is the thing. Being on is the one. If you're on, you get noticed. If you're up and down, up and down, up and down, it's just gonna.
Consistency is key, much like with anything else in life, isn't it?
Yeah. So long story short, we got it on, and we were battering around for a name for the station. For a little while, and we came up with Image. Well, I think it was Don come up with the name Image, and I just thought, I don't know, at the time I was like, Image, but for an audio-based station, it was like a radio station, does Image really suit? But he came up with some mad slogans like Image is everything, and so Donovan is the one that came up with a lot of them, even the jingles that I brought back, which I'm sure we'll touch on later.
I was going to say, Image is everything definitely rings some bells, mate.
So he came up with some pretty cool jingles, and Sachi had just got into web design as well. So the internet was just starting to pivot into a thing as well. So we switched on, we had a website up and running. It was live streaming at like 62 kilobits, and it could have like 8 listeners at most at one time. And I actually went on Web Archive the other day, because you can actually look at websites from that era, and it had so much content on it. Obviously, nothing loads now because it's an archive from 20 years ago. But like we had like tons of comments. We had galleries, we had our own forums, we had the live stream running. We had video content up there. It was basic stuff. We had listener galleries, we had reviews, adverts. It was a decent little website. So that the website was there from the start, and we were streaming, although it was barely streaming in terms of audio quality. But at that time, we were still kind of way ahead of the curve.
Was it was it 99.7 you were on at that point?
So yeah, we went on 997. It wasn't, I don't know in the real world whether it was a better dial for getting out, but it got us no hassle, even though there were stations either side. But I think there's always been stations jumping on that dial historically for years. So it was kind of just, I think people accepted that the 0.1 gaps between East London and West London was just that. And we never got bothered on 997 by no one. And that station took off. And you've got to remember at that time, I think Ice was still on, Flex were on, Freeze were on. There was lots of competition around, but we were still pulling some decent DJs in. We had people coming to guest shows left, right, and centre. The studio was pretty tidy for that era in terms of decent set of techniques, nice decent mixer. We did upgrade to a mini disc for jingles and adverts and all that. Only thing that let that studio down was, and it ran for like a good 18 months to a year. And it was on all the time, every weekend. Like we jacked the rig so far down that we just left it on a timer. it was on it wasn't even a digital timer, it was one of them analog timers, because we used to go 7 days a week. We were one of the, and maybe Freeze might say they turned on first, but I remember having a conversation with Adam Freeze, actually, I think, saying, I'm going 24/7. And he was saying, you know what, I'm going to do the same. But we went from 6 till 6 till 2 weekdays, where I think Freeze just went, leave it on all the time. So I just had it on an analog timer, 5 to 6 comes on, 2 a.m. 2 a.m. goes off, and it was jacked so far down that no one was going to get it.
So I did mention this when Henny was talking about jacking, but I'll talk about it again. And basically, for anyone who doesn't know, what happens is that when we talk about a rig, it's a box about this sort of size, and it is the transmitter. It's where all the power comes from. It's where all the little technical bits are. And basically, what happens is it gets connected onto sometimes a metal plate or onto a lock or something like that, and it gets connected to a car jack, like an old school car jack that you would wind open or pump open, sort of thing they'd find as a spare in your car boot. And basically,
car boot jack, scissor jack.
Yeah. And then you stick it down into a shaft with the rig either bolted onto it or hanging off of it by a D-lock, a cycling D-lock, and literally it gets stuck all the way down into a shaft. And then either you use a pole to open it or you pump it open. And as it opens up, it wedges onto the side of the shaft, and that way no one can get to it, like not even you, and it just stays there, and nothing can happen to it, and it doesn't fall down because it's wedged in there. So yeah, that's jacking in. And I was told by Henny, literally,
I went next level.
Yeah, before we even spoke about it on the podcast, he said to me, he's like, because we got into a random conversation about radio based on, I'm sure you've seen a certain ex-pirate radio thief is very unhappy at my podcast at the moment. And me and Henny were having a conversation about like a few incidents and some history. And it came up that I was on Image and Ice. He was like, Steve taught me how to jack in. Like, I never knew what it was before. Yeah. So we always like, every time we speak and it comes up, it just gets associated with you.
Yeah. You know what? I went next level with carjacking. Like, I can't remember who taught me, and I should really be grateful to the person that taught me, and I can't remember who it was for the life of me now. But it was through a friend of a friend. We just got conversating just about from a few years back, from when we started getting into radio. I went next level. So my carjacks had when it expanded, it had 45-degree angle plates, so it locked diagonally. Yeah, so when it locked in the shoe, it was locked. And then I also had it on hinges, so it would hinge, right? And underneath the flap would be I wouldn't just put a nut and bolt on it, right? I would put a lock-in wheel nut, one of them mad swirly things. Honestly, mate, if your pole came off when you're trying to jack it in, you would be there for 2 hours just trying to line it up so you could carry on tightening it. I actually got some stories with Nut. I think we were up there doing something with Lee, and we were up there this is far later on, so we're still doing the same thing, 2 hours trying to get a rig out. But anyway, I jacked it about 40 foot down, and I'd used electrical conduit to put the poles. Now, the problem with electrical conduit is it's joined, so it wobbles like fuck. So anyway, I had a plate that went over the locking nut, right? And then on the plate was a yaw lock.
Yep.
Right? So the plate would sit on top of the jack, and it would go like that. So, and it was diagonally cut as well, so it fit perfectly the shape of the square. So not only did you have to get the yaw key down into the hole and unlock the yaw key, which had a little spring to release it, to then flip it up. Once you got that up, you then had to get your pole down there and get it onto the locking wheel nut, which was a mission in itself. So I go back to saying we bought 8 rigs. Yeah, I think the first one we didn't set up too well. I think we put it behind a water tank and just de-locked it. And I think DTI got that one. That rig stayed up there for probably 9 months. So much so that what we did is to kind of give ourselves like a little something back to Ofcom. Some people might say we're stupid for doing that. We used to occasionally set a second aerial up, or we used to have a joiner on the aerial so we could take the coax off, and we used to basically almost leave a rig. So it was just de-locked in a pretty obvious place. And we just put that rig on, maybe the 150 rather than the 200 or the 300, whatever, if we had a couple of them as well, I'm sure. And we'd let them take them, just so they felt that they were getting something from us, because as you probably spoke to other people, when you're in that position when you start to grow up, they can't get your kit. They come for your studio.
Yeah.
That was the necessary. We thought, you know what, let them take a rig here and there. You know, we're not losing them that often. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, when Image kind of rounded up, which was about 18 months later, we actually took that rig back out of the air vent. We unjacked it and took it out. And I think we still had a couple of rigs left, even after that. But that was a really good station that I really enjoyed getting, because that was the first time when we were running a station, the three of us. We were all on the same vibe. We all had music that we enjoyed in terms of Image. So I was still quite heavily into the garage, but I still liked my drum and bass, and I was still into that. Donovan was quite heavily into the drum and bass, so he had got a lot of good links. I had links from Round the Manor, from Ealing, and a lot of local talent that was coming on. Logic Hansachi had same guy, sorry. He had a few guys from like Feltham and His Way that played a bit of everything. So we had a good catch of DJs, and that station went really well. And I think it would have probably been a lot bigger station in terms of how well known it was if there wasn't so much competition at that time, because there were so many like really big stations on that were just smashing the granny out of it, left, right, and centre. That it was, and it didn't have the big money. Like, it was just like three lads. Throwing a couple of grand at it to get it started, and luckily managed to keep it going. So yeah, I think if it had maybe been a different era, or maybe like if Blaze had been Image from the start and we'd have done that station could have probably been a lot bigger than what it was. And the only reason it finished was because the studio was in a bit of a bay location. So in that same business centre, I didn't want to be where all the other pirates were. So I deliberately took a unit around the other side, because I was microwaving. I was like, band one is spawn of the devil, right? I will not ban one link ever, apart from a CB radio, of course. So I had to microwave. So I got a studio around the other side where I could see the block, just about see the block, so I could microwave it. But the problem with that was the studio was like up the stairs, and then the first door that you come to was our door. So it was a little bit exposed in terms of getting access to it, even though we had all of the key fob doors and the code doors left, right, and centre to get into the building. It was kind of right on the entrance to the business centre, and I think it got broken. Well, it did get broken. It got broken into, and it got robbed. And we had footage from another person that had cameras in the building. So I'm not going to go into who it was and whatnot, but what goes around comes around, and I think it did. So we got robbed, and it was just someone let them in. So all of the doors and all that, someone just let them in, and they just came straight out the door. It wasn't a big secure door; they just put it through, and they were gone in a couple of minutes. And that broke my little heart. I'm not going to lie; that really took the wind out of me when that happened, because I felt we were onto something. And I think we tried to put it back on. But I think we then moved back downstairs. We tried to move it back downstairs into where the rest of the guys were, because we thought, well, at least we're in our little hub. Like, if they come for us, someone's going to know. I don't know. I just think it just fizzled. I think we all were. The wind was knocked out of our sails a little bit by that. So it kind of just dissipated. But obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I got to know DJP from Street FM quite well. He was a sound geezer and one of his partners as well. So I kind of, as Image first iteration kind of faded away, I started helping P out, and was earning a little change for getting him up on the block, because I was using the big blocks in Acton, which had been changed to a multi-key. And the multi-key, like when we first went on them blocks, I was like, shit, I put multi-locks on them. Fuck, bastards. So I got the key by lift engineer. I just blagged the lift engineer. I said, look, can I just take this lock? Because he was up there doing his thing. I said, can I take the lock? I'll bring the lock back. I just want to get the key cut for it. And then we had a really good locksmith up at Town Station. And he'd do anything. Like, he didn't care. So the money was right. He cut me the keys to Fort Knox if you asked him, and then the money was there for him. So he managed to cut me the multi-lock key. And he made it a master multi-lock. So I then had a multi-lock master. I took the lock back, and the lift engineer was still there. I said, look, there's your lock back. And he was like, well, if I ever get locked out of blocks, I know you'll come and see and all that. And I'm like, of course, mate, come and see me, favour for a favour. So I had the multi-lock key. Obviously, Image was running on there with the multi-lock key. So no one could get up there, and the rigs were safe. And I did a little bit of work with P, and I sold him like a lot of leftover gear we had from Image. But he also said, look, if you come and help me out, you get me on the blocks, so we have some change. So I then transitioned away from running a station to helping people out, because it was just like, it was in the blood, you know what I mean? I just wanted to get involved in radio. And I did a few shows on the street as well, which used to be a station on 944. It used to come from West London as well. And when I put, do you remember Sounds I filmed? 943?
Yep.
So bit of a conflict of interest for me anyway, because I put Sounds street on 944 on them blocks in Acton, right? But I was buying my rigs from someone that was involved in Sounds, if you know what I mean. And if you know if people out there know the link between some of the people from them stations, there was a rig seller down in deepest, darkest southeast London. But he was also heavily involved in providing sounds, or was one of the people involved in Sounds. So I was buying rigs on 944, sticking them on a massive block, and was wiping out the other station in southeast London all around west. But it was what it was at the time, and it wasn't my station, and it was a bit, I was earning a few quid from it as well. So yeah, so helped him out for a little while, and then where did we go from there? Then I started. I think it was Live FM. I actually went and again through a mutual friend or through someone that knew someone. They were like, "You need to speak to Roast. I know he's having some problems with life. I think you could really help him out." So I got an intro through what was the guy's name? I think the lad was called Kilo, Fat Cat. And he did an intro, and Kilo used to play on Freak, I think, back in the day as well. And I think he did me an intro to Roast, and I met Roast and Lioness, and they seemed cool. And Life's still running now. Fair play to them. They've taken the internet and they've gone that route, and they're running. And for all intents and purposes, they seem like they're doing all right.
They were one of the earlier ones to go just internet. I remember when I was on World FM after Flight closed, and MTech started up World FM. I did a couple of guest shows on Life when it was like first just internet, and it was one of the, I know MTech obviously had World FM, and he was one of the early people to sort of say this is going to be it in the next 15 years. Like, there's nothing else FM's going to be a bit of a waste of time. But then when I was going there, Paul was saying exactly the same thing, and yeah, I got to know them a little bit as well. No, they were all right, and it was a good little setup as well. Really good little setup they had.
So I don't know where they moved to when they actually went for full internet only, but like I think there was a few guys, and there was a few people from like Freeze that were actually doing who were on Live FM at the same time. Like I think Adrian Atom, maybe Adrian Atom, and there was a couple of others, and I think Chucky actually in Fatal Attraction might have been on Live at the same time. Now Live Studio was one of the best in terms of tucked awayness studios I can remember. They're not there anymore, so I think I can talk about it. But it was in Hamwell, behind the Quick Fit or whatever it is up there, and it was in a butcher's freezer. So what they've done is they converted a butcher's freezer into a studio. They partitioned it down the middle of the freezer, and the decks were at the back, and it was all carpeted and soundproof. They had big speakers, and then it was like a partition across it with a door shut. And then you had another little sort of chilling area as such. But the thing with it was that Paul used to always be in that studio. Like there was a little kind of other bit to it, and there was always someone there. And he was a bit of a wind-up merchant, Paul. Like he was a cool guy, but he was like he liked to test you. And he'd lock the freezer, so he'd lock you in. And there was no push button to release it. So you don't normally have that little bar that if you get locked in a freezer, like a little pin. There was none of that, so you could be in there like I think one night like someone did lock us in there, and me and a guy called Tony Amigo, I think, is it Tony Amigo? I'm sure it was Three Amigos. Yeah, we used to just say leave us in here, mate. We'll just stay through the night. We used to do graveyards and Life, and again I stuck Paul up in Southampton, and I think I stuck him on the other blocks as well for a bit to try and help him get out, because he was getting grief in Greenford. I think he was in Greenford at the time. We weren't getting out too well on 981, I think it was, if my mind serves me right. I helped him out for a little while and doing my bits and bobs with him, trying to help him stay on. And again, all of my intentions, like with all of the stations I helped out, Street and Life and all that, was just helping them out, like, because I had that love for music. And if I got a show out of it, great. It meant I could do my thing and showcase what I was trying to do as a DJ. And then, I don't know, I think, I'll say he got a bit paranoid. I think he did get a bit paranoid because he'd been getting chomped, he'd been getting munched. And he didn't accuse me of stealing, but he basically was going, it's you, innit? You're nicking my rigs. But he was saying it with a smile on his face. But I kind of felt deep down he did think it was me, even though, like, I was going up to them blocks 2 o'clock in the morning in Southampton with crackheads, you know, heroin in there, top of the stairs with needles popping out their arms, trawling through them blocks on my jacks to turn the rig off. Like, if I wanted to steal the rig, I could steal the rig, but that wasn't in me.
It's one of them situations where someone says it as a joke to gauge your reaction to see if it's you.
Yeah. And to be honest, I was a bit insulted, if the truth be told. And I thought, you know what, allow you then. Like, if that's what you're going to think, then do your thing. And I think I just walked away from that because I think he generally did think that I was nicking his rigs. And like I say, I could have gone there and took his rigs at any time I wanted, any time. I wouldn't go out there at 2 a.m. or 1 o'clock at night. I could have gone there at half an hour after it was turned on and got away, you know? So I wouldn't be going up there when the crackheads are about with needles hanging out their arm to get the rig down. So I kind of just moved away from that. And then it was probably about 2002, 2003, that I started speaking to, again, just, you know, forums. I think the internet had started to take up, and there's a few forums, Stay Locked. I think, yeah, it was definitely Stay Locked. So Stay Locked was the one before Who's Locked.
Yeah.
And Stay Locked was quite, considering what is it, the one now? Radio Next.
Yeah.
Radio Next jokes. Now, Radio Next was peak at certain times back in the day, but it's kind of, it's dead now. But in comparison, Stay Locked was fucking huge in terms of forums. They had like sub forums like Reddit nowadays. They had like every single music had a specific forum. They had off-topic stuff. It was a massive, massive forum. And lots of people on there, me included. And I think I was listening to React because I was just an avid listener of radio, and I was flicking through the dial, and I think I picked up React crystal clear. And first thing I do whenever I pick up a new station that's really strong is I pull the area out the back of the stereo, see what's cracking. Right, they were local, but I could, when listening to them, they were sporadic. Like they were on, off, on, off, on, off. And I was like, that just sounds like guarantee rig thief jobs. So I reached out to Henny, and I think it was through the forums, or I either texted the studio and said, I've pinged Henny on the forum, get him to have a look. I might be able to help you out. And then I just started helping them guys out with React. And we stuck them on the Southampton blocks because I had the master key, so I could get into any block in Southampton anywhere. Every block was multi-lock. So I stuck them up there for a bit. I said, look, you know, again, just here to help you out. And I'm a music lover. If I can help you succeed and I can get a show and be a part of it, I'm good, mate. Don't worry about anything more than that from me. So yeah, I started helping them out because they were having nightmares. Like I remember helping Henny in the blocks in Hammersmith. I think one of the ones he alluded to in his chat, and we cemented the rig in right under the water tank. Like we brought 25 kilo bags of cement up to the top of the block, and we pissed on it, and we threw all kinds of nastiness on it, anything that we could do to make people not want to go near it, and they still went and got it. And they were proper. Like we put trip switches on the hatch. We put trip switches on the door, aluminium foil, little like contacts on the hatch, so that as soon as you opened the hatch, the rig went off. Anything to try and give us some uptime to get there. But they were just over it. So I said, look, Henny, let's go stick you on Acton. And then they started bagging out, and they were doing all right. And as Henny alluded to in his chat with you, there was a guy called Charlie, and he was a sound guy, and he was passionate for music. He had a recording studio, and he had a label called Ice Cold Records, which is where the name Ice Cold came from. He had a label called Ice Cold Recordings, which I think Caliber, Ben Caliber. He used to work quite closely with Charlie and do a lot of the studio engineering for him. So that's where the name Ice Cold actually was originally born from, was from the studio record label, the recording studio. So, he was like popping in and out and saying, yeah, I like what you're doing, because React were renting the gaff from him at the milk factory at the bottom of we're getting nearer to our time now, at the bottom of the industrial straight where the Shell garage was in Acton Vale. So you drive right down to the bottom. They're gone now, so I can talk about this, I'm pretty sure. And there was a gate, and it was into the milk factory, but you had to go into the milk factory and then around a few corners to get where you needed to be. So it was like a wicked little place to have a studio, because the gate was always locked and no one was getting in. Like, even if DTI come, like, just hang around at the gates, guys. You're going to be there for a long time. So they had a cushy little studio in that little building there, and it was like everything was running sweet, but they were having their ups and downs. And Charlie was like, I want to put on a station, blah, blah, blah. So we were scouting around for dials and thinking, what can we do? He sort of spun it to us, look, I want to start a station, we call it Ice Cold. Like, can you get involved and help us out with it? Obviously, I see you help React. And there was another guy, Crazy G, as well, who was helping out Henny and that. And he was like, can you get involved? And then the remedy was flowing about as well. So, big up Rimmer, big up Henny, big up Crazy G, big up Charlie, and all of them, the guys there, because we had a wicked time in that little phase of React and Ice Cold. It was a nice little hub. I remember Wiley being there on like a Saturday afternoon, just shelling, like blazing sunshine, like the studio was roasting, and he'd just be there. He just turned up, started shelling on React. I'm sure it was React. Mad times. So Charlie kind of got into his, got the notion of doing the thing and asked us all to be involved. See, he knew I had good technical knowledge and had lived and breathed it for a good few years. Crazy was also heavily involved in radio. So he was kind of, he did a lot of stations in South London. I can't remember the name of them all now from off the top of my head, but he had good experience as well. And then obviously Remedy had been running stations, and he'd asked a little bit of help from him as well. So he had three really knowledgeable guys that knew the ins and outs of radio, pretty well versed. Only thing that Charlie, fair play to him, he was headstrong, right? And when he made a decision, he stuck by it, and that's good, because you know when you're making these decisions about what you're doing, where you're going with stuff, you've got to kind of stick by your guns. But I think when he went on, I think we jumped on 961 for a bit. That went a bit Pete Tong. There was a little bit.
Henny told the story on the episode. Yeah,
I've only listened to a little bit of Henny's because it was so long. I haven't got all the way through it, or I've skipped through, so I need to go backtrack. So if he's touched on it. So anyway, long story short, I think they knew the 961 Supreme thing, and Charlie ended up having a conversation. They ended up knowing each other one way or the other, and that put them in touch with Function. And Function, I believe at the time, was running Unknown. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. And he had 3 dials. He was running 896, 971, and 108 at the same time for Unknown. And Unknown were smashing out everywhere. Like, they were massive at that particular moment. But I think that was also their downfall to some extent, because they were taking the piss.
Yeah, later on they had
about it.
They had 108, they had 90.6, and then I think 894 as well. And that was at the end. And
yeah,
then
894, yeah, that's it.
They went round.
You're right, 894.
I won't say whose house it was, but they went round his house and they basically the fine that he got. I mean, there's a news article on it, so I mean, you could sit here and I could give you detail, but yeah, no, the fine that he got and everything else, I think after that was like no bueno.
Right. Okay. Well, so I don't even know the story, so that's interesting. I have to go and trawl the internet for some reading. So anyway, yeah, he said, look, you can have a 971, and when Charlie said that to me, I was like, I instinctively was like, nah, don't do it. It's heat. Like, Unknown, any other station that's been on that dial gets fucked. You get bent over and you get fucked. And you become the bill poster for Ofcom. Yeah, you become that guy. Yeah, this is why we don't like pirate radio. But like, fair play to Charlie. He was like, fuck them. Like, they can take my rings. I'll just put another one up. It's my dial now and we're cracking on. And so we all went with it, and we did. And like you say, we went to some mad lengths to secure rigs. Like, I know, I remember, because, like, again, skipping through, Henny talking about smashing the blocks on top of the rig to literally cement the chimney to get the rig in. And I think that rig stayed there for a long time. Now, the funny thing is, the story that Henny didn't talk about, which maybe because he didn't come up there, was the squat. So I think they mentioned the story. I'm sure I skipped through it. I said I need to listen to that because that might be funny. But I know what he was talking about. It was a squat on the top of the blocks when the old build came, right? So that squat ended up becoming the studio for Ice Cold for a while, because Charlie was aware that React was in the same place as we had our studio as well. So React was in one port and we were just around the corner in another part. And he just wanted to just take the heat away from that space. So we ended up sticking 971 Ice Cold in the squat on the top of the block. And what we did is we just ran the L&B coax into the squat. So we had the horn there and the L&B there, and it was linking 2 inches. It was linking, but it was literally boom, boom. And then that just went up to the block. And we rided that out for a good while. And then I think React kind of faded, and it became, can't remember the ins and outs why, but I know it just kind of dissipated, because it's a long time ago, even for me. And so Ice Cold then moved back to what was React Studio at the time, and we ended up just using that as our base, and we were in there. But we were on, and like I say, we'd all just kind of got on that vibe that we don't care, we're just going to ride it out. So we had the volume probably a bit too high for LBC's liking. We probably did have a bit too much punch in our bass. It probably was a piss take to stick up 300 waters on big double stacks on the blocks next to the old Bill station. So I probably, in reflection, some of that heat was probably justified because we didn't care. When we were all on board with that, we all made that choice to kind of just carry on, let's just do this. So Ice Cold was doing its thing, it was doing really well. It was competing, considering the dial it was on, like it was a respected station. There was a lot of people quite a buzz about it around West London. It came on and it was instantly recognised, maybe because where it was positioned, and maybe that brought us some benefit because it was sandwiched between them 2 legal stations. It was doing its thing, but it was a tough slog, Ice Cold, because that dial just tough, hard work. And I can tell you some stories, but it's not for me to go into because they're quite deep stories. But yeah, it got a bit mad, and ultimately the station kind of came to a stop for a little while. Now, in the course of that, Charlie kind of took a back seat, is what I'll use the term as. But me and Crazy were like, no, fuck this. We can't let this stop. But we can't go on 971. Like, just can't. Like, it's just never going to we're never going to have that opportunity to really do our thing if we stay on that dial. So anyway, Crazy being a South London lad, he knew through a few guys from the South London area, a couple of the guys that used to set up the light. V, I won't say his name just in case, but V used to set up, and I think if you know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. But I think he used to do a lot of work for Delight. So we spoke to him, and they were like, "Yeah, Delight's kind of finished. Look, I'll tell the guys you're using the dial." And there was some, right, you can use the dial basically. So me and Crazy stuck Ice Cold on 103. But we didn't have a studio because we couldn't go back to the old gaff because of just the nightmares that had happened there. We had a block, but we just didn't have a good studio. And luckily, just through my trawling around and just inquiring left, right, and centre, found the studio in Bush. And I don't know if this is where you first joined the team, in Shepherd's Bush, which was
I joined
next to McDonald's.
No, I was talking to Ashley J about it actually. I joined it was already in the Vale, but it was the first one in the Vale, not the second one that ended up being Image. Like it was the first one just outside the door there.
Yeah. So that was kind of the sort of third iteration of Ice Cold. So me and Crazy stuck it back in the studio in Bush near McDonald's on Shepherd's Bush Green. A pucky little gaff, like tucked away parking was good considering it was Shepherd's Bush Green. It was easy to find, but it was pretty tucked away in terms of you would never know where it was. Great thing about it was it had a flat roof. Again, not doing bound one. I was like, wherever we go, we have to be able to microwave from. Like, I don't care. We are not bound one. It's spawn of the devil, pal. So the touch is that I could point the horn, again, a block that's been mentioned numerous times, towards Edward Woods, right? So I was pointing it towards Notting Hill, and it would reflect off of the glass, or I don't, even my technical brain is pretty savvy about this. Don't know how it worked, but it would bounce off the blocks and then travel all the way to Acton. So I was pointing the horn the completely opposite direction to where it needed to point, but because it was bouncing, it linked to Acton. So even if the DTI came hunting for that horn, if they were up on the block wanting to try and find a signal, it would have just taken them to Woods. Yeah. By then, we would have turned everything off anyway. So it was a flat roof, easy to get to, bounced the horn. We was on, bought a Behringer compressor, got a few rigs, got the studio set up in this little, it was like a mic booth, but it was just big enough to put decks in. And CDJs had started to kind of become a thing. So we had some CDJs in there, and we were on, rolling 103, bash, Ice Cold is back, baby. And yeah, we had a good little run in there. Get an expensive studio, and big up Brian, who took some persuading to rent the studio to me because he knew what we were doing. He wasn't stupid. He knew it was pirate, but he was getting paid, so it's cool. But it took some convincing to let us in because he knew what we were doing. He was like, "I'm not feeling it." I was like, "We'll be cool, man. We're good. We know. We'll be quiet. We won't take the piss." We took the piss, of course we did. So pack a little studio, ran there for a good while. Everything's running pretty well, and me and Crazy, like I got a lot of time. Crazy's a good guy, but we didn't know each other before Ice Cold in terms of what it was. So we both had our own kind of position on where we wanted to go with the station in terms of what we wanted to do and where it wanted to go. I just don't think we aligned. I just think we were just chalk and cheese a little bit. I think Crazy wanted to go quite down the house route and make it a really house-focused station. And at that time, I just felt there's a sea of house out there. Like, let's keep that multi-genre thing going because that's in demand. Everyone loves a bit of everything as long as it's positioned at the right time and the right day. But he really wanted to go down that house route. I just wasn't feeling it. So again, I just kind of just said, look, do your thing, mate. It's all ready. Here's the studio. Pay the man, and you can carry on, do your thing, crack on. So Gary took it over for, I think he was running it by himself for maybe 6 months, 8 months, a year, maybe. Again, long time ago, so it's hard to remember the exact timings. But I remember they lost that studio a couple of months after I'd left, and they ended up moving to the Arches down in Hammersmith, underneath the underground Arches, and they were coming from there. I think that's the first time they tried to use the internet to link, because the place they had good internet, had like one of the best internets at the time, and they started to try using a computer and then linking from the computer back to the blocks. And Gary carried it on for a little while, but I just think it just fizzled. It just kind of fizzled out. But like the stallion's maybe not the right word, but like just the something inside me was like, nah. After all we've been through with this station and all the pitfalls and the peaks and of that, we can't let it go. So I caught up with Gary randomly and said, look, if you ain't going to put it on, I'll stick it back on. Because I think the other thing was passion. I think he then let passion use 103. And from my block, right? And I'm not really a hater because Passion were a great station. I actually love listening to Feel Good and Ram in the morning doing their breakfast shows. They were like so entertaining back in the day. But something in me was like, they're using my block and they're using my dial and they're already smashing out on 918 or whatever they were on. Like, it's a fucking liberty. Like, let me put something back on it. So I kind of took it back over on with Todd. Risky maneuver, all things considered. Because it was just little old me doing my thing. But I don't even know how I met Raw. who was running Urban FM, where we shared that original studio that we're talking about in that the Vale Business Centre. Friend of a friend again. I think maybe even Gary might have said, "Oh, I've got somebody you might know, might want to speak to." I can't remember now. It's really a long time ago. But anyway, long story short, that studio came up. It had a roof that was accessible. Microwave to the block was piece of pash. Boom, ice cold was back on.
I was going to ask actually, because obviously that was where I first joined, was that studio, and I remember you having the old school way we used to do things. I remember you having a little portable radio under the decks that was it never even volume weren't even on most of the time. It was there just in case to know if we.
Yes.
But I was always wondering, like, are we linking from here, or because we stopped saying FM? Do you remember? Like, we at that time, everyone did it. Like, we all stopped saying 103, and I remember thinking, is he doing an internet link, or are we actually linking from here?
So the first when I turned it back on, because I needed to get internet in for about the first 4 weeks. Well, I think I tried to share the other station, Urban FM's internet, but it just wasn't capable because they were running video stream and audio, and me trying to put like a half decent audio stream through it at the same time. The internet, and it was upload speed, it wasn't download speed. It just weren't cutting the mustard. So I was either wiping out him and he was going off, or vice versa. So what I did was I linked from there for about a month when it first started. And the funny thing is, if you go onto Red Bull's, have you been on the Red Bull music site?
Yeah.
There are photos of that original image Ice Cold studio in there, because it's got all the Lavish posters, and it's on the Red Bull site. I was amazed. I saw that. I was like,
where else
there's a photo.
There's a lot of photos from it. Do you remember? Obviously, everyone knows People Just Do Nothing. Like, isn't our big thing.
Yeah.
So when we had them down in the studio with us,
I've got a story about that.
The funky story.
Yeah.
They were in the studio with us, and them videos, because they haven't put the full video on YouTube, but it's all photo stills, and it's all pictures of them like sitting under the desk and like all sorts of shit.
So maybe that's where the photos came from. I think it was a guy called Tom. Tom might have taken the photos anyway. But yeah, I've seen photos of that studio in some most peculiar places. And yeah, the Red Bull site, when I was looking at the Red Bull, and there was like some pirate radio history on their Red Bull. So I was like, that's my studio, fucking hell. So anyway, we were in there for about a month, and I waited for the internet coming. And then I was living not far away from there, like 5 minutes around the corner. So what ultimately ended up happening was, once the internet was in, I internet linked. So I think I was probably one of the first people again to really utilize the internet to link like solidly. Because when I turned Ice Cold back on, it came back on 7 days a week from the start. It didn't, I don't think or maybe again the first month, I might have just put it on from 6 o'clock and then all weekend, but it pretty quickly was on all the time. That was down to jacking the rig deep down in the hole, so no one could get to it. The block was secure because it was a key that only I had. And I managed to internet link from the studio. So from the studio, I was linking to my gaff. My missus is going to still to this day hates me for it. I had a 19-inch rack mount in my front room, and it had an Auburn compressor. And if you're into radio, look up Auburn. It's an audio processor. It had an Auburn. It was a very old one, but it was still better than most stations out there at the time had. Had an Auburn figure, it had a second compressor, then it had this network rack, and then it had a NIC, little mini NIC computer that was receiving the stream. So that it was streaming from the studio to my gaff. It was coming out of the computer, going through the Auburn processor, and then from the processor, it was going through my house like cables, trailing through my house, through to the kitchen, onto a little kind of extension that I used to climb out of the hallway. So I used to go out of my flat, go up the stairs, climb out a window, onto this next door neighbour's flat roof. And I just used to put the horn. But the beauty of it was I'd look out the window and the block was there. Like literally it was just like, oh. And so it was so easy to link, but it was so secure as well, because where the horn was, like DTI could get between that and the block, if you know what I mean, to try and track it. So they could point their equipment wherever they wanted to try and find out where it was. They couldn't get between that point and the block because there was something in between it that you couldn't drive through to check. The only way you could go is behind it, and by then you're behind it, you're not going to get any signal. So it was probably mad to run it from my house in terms of linking from my house, but actually was probably one of the safest moves in terms of keeping the studio safe in terms from the DTI, because they couldn't get to the studio because it was internet linked. And that rolled. And then I don't know, I think the reason I did put Ice Cold back on when Gary kind of had enough is I think it was around the time Freeze finished.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually, because I remember coming on there and you gave us because Mr. E was doing shows of Unique, Gary, and me and Eamon have had the conversation several times, because funnily enough, like a lot of people didn't even realize, like before the image show that we did together, me and Eamon didn't work together. Like we knew each other. And we just literally, we knew each other. We knew a couple of the same people. We were working as management together on another radio station. We both left at around the same time. Yeah. So we both left at the same time. And then basically, like, he was basically, like, Eamon did a lot of local parties around Pimlico, Victoria, around the area. And he would always he'd always basically say, look, I'm going to give you an X amount, come up, help me lift all the decks and that into my car, help me set up, do the early set, play a bit of music. And that's how we got to know each other. And it was literally like, he said to me, like, we went down to Flex FM when Flex FM first came back on. I was talking to Outlaw about it on 94.2. We were down there with Billy Wiz, because he was mates with Billy, and he was doing some Sunday morning shows there with Simon Lawrence. And basically what happened was we went down and we done a show with Billy Wiz. We left Flex and we were talking about either getting a show on there or somewhere else. And at the time he'd been coming on with Gary on Top Ice Cold as well. Right. And he was like, Jay, he said to me, Jay, look, you're good with like this presenting stuff. Like you do things really professionally. You do this, you do that. He's like, I want to do a show like that. Yeah. He's like, I want to do a show like that, but I only want to do it with you if you're serious. And I was like, yeah, cool. And then for whatever reason, 3 or 4 days later, like Gary got in touch. He's like, yeah, Steve said you could have Tuesday 6 to 8. And I was like, how? Because Freeze has just fucking closed, and that station is now Ramo with basically like half of Freeze's old like best DJs.
Yeah, I think again, actually, reflecting back, it kind of all just kind of happened. Like I say, Gary kind of just went, I don't want to do it. I weren't happy about Passion using the dial, and I felt it was a bit of a piss take because they were already on 2 dials. I think they had one in 918. They had another one in East London as well. They had it was 979 they had in one spot. They had 981 over in Old Street Bow, somewhere like that. And then they had 103 in West. And I was like, man, that's it's not needed, is it? Like, no station really needs 3 dials. And then obviously I think Freeze did just finish as well. And I just thought to myself, now is the time. If you're going to put it back on, like, it's the perfect time to do it, because I had that process in my head of make it multi-genre, don't go down one specific route, and it all just kind of fell into place. And I think Freeze finishing was a little bit to my benefit, but Freeze was a massive station, like, and I looked up to them because Adam, in my opinion, Ingrid, they I think they were the best running out of it.
I think out of all stations all time, like in terms of consistency, the levels they were reaching, output, like just the clarity of everything they did. For me, it's up there with ever.
So, I talked about that Auburn processor. The only reason I bought that processor is because I knew Freeze had one. I was like, they sound good because I got one of them, so I need one of them. And I big up Ashley J as well. Props to him on that documentary, man. That's a great piece of work, man. I really enjoyed watching that. Some very cool footage, and like great to see that archive, because that stuff, like I was looking back when I was looking for stuff from the original image, although I'd had a lot of stuff, like just touching back. I did a documentary for Swedish TV for SVT in Sweden, which was like BBC One of Sweden, for the original image back in 2000. And I remember having the video cassette of it. But I remember like that video thinking, wow, them sort of things I'd love to have now, but they've gone. They're lost to the ether of a dump somewhere. So
Were
have
you
that
involved?
footage.
There was another documentary. I've watched pretty much every pirate documentary you could ever see.
Yeah,
I think it was the Stay Sailing one, and it featured Ice Cold in it. Were you around? Were you involved in that? Because I know it was that DJ. Is it Polo or Rollo, whatever his name was?
yeah.
Like,
So
he's in it,
I think
and
that
then
was
it's on. I know it's on the block, like so. I know it was the right place, but was it? Were you
yeah.
around then?
No, so I think that was. I think there's some footage of the original Bush studio, which was in that little tiny compartment. If that footage is the footage I'm thinking of, it was like a little rectangle, no bigger than a public toilet, truth be told. Yeah, so no, I think it was just when I kind of decided that it's going too one way, and I just didn't feel that was the right thing to do. So I think I'd not long walked after, because not long after that, that's when that studio went. So they ended up moving out. So yeah, it was around that time. But yeah, I think I've seen the documentary you're referring to.
It's a good documentary, actually. There's a little bit of flex in
yeah.
there. A lot of people from Itch FM and other stations as well.
Yes, Itch FM, Bad Boy Station 105.15. The only station I've ever known to use
a 0.5.
1.5. And they still worked. It worked for them. That was one of them. That's a station, in my opinion, that probably should have got a lot more. Should be a lot more remembered and recognised, because that station, actually, Itch FM, was one of them stations that was completely in a different direction to all of the other pirates that were pretty much about, in terms of the hip hop and that kind of more gritty music. And I think they've never probably got the recognition they probably deserve, but they did run for a very long time. Wicked station. I remember listening to a lot of if I just wanted something different. They remind me of a sort of modern day. Is it Renaissance?
Yeah.
Yeah. But Renaissance goes a bit too quirky, but they have some of them real kind of unique sounding shows that are really kind of cutting edge. But anyway, so where was I? So yeah, Ice Cold back on, booming. Freeze had just gone off. I got the internet link. I got the big boy rigs. I had the place locked down. I'll be honest, truth be told, like I was just little old me doing my thing. And I think it took me a little while to adjust, because before I knew it, like everyone was on me. So I think, like saying, and not blowing trumpets here, because I feel pretty humble about it, or even to this day, is that I reckon if you'd have been another month later in terms of getting that timing right, it probably would have been a no.
Yep.
Because I had people, like everyone from Freeze was all over me. I think some people were just like, nah, Freeze is never going to be beaten. I ain't going anywhere else. Freeze is coming back. I'm sure a few people said, Freeze is coming back. But then when the likes of Ashley wanted to come on, I kind of was like, well, I don't think they're coming back, because I knew Ashley was running or helping running the original 904 from Norfolk. So it kind of gave me confidence that I've got an opportunity to really grasp the West London scene, and I took it. And yeah, 24 hours a day, a lot of good DJs. Before I knew it, Martin Lana's phoning me up, Chunky's phoning me up, Hypes is on me, Elsky's on me, everyone. And I was just like, you know what? I'd be stupid not to take these people on board, because it was just the right thing to do. Like I just wanted to make the station as big as possible, but I also wanted to balance that with some not unknowns, and that was a really hard thing to do. Like honestly, when I started getting into this, like when I took that Ice Cold on 103, when I stuck it back on, I really did. My mind was really thoughtful about, like all the other times before, it's just about putting music on, getting out there, getting some DJs on, having fun, enjoying. But it became a little bit more clinical in my thinking. But I wanted to balance like all the big names with some unknowns, because unknowns become big names. But that's really challenging to do, because you've got to kiss a lot of frogs, if you know what I mean, to find the real good ones. And I can say, and I'm saying it honestly, it's not an arse-licking thing, but you were one of the good ones. You and Eamon, like your show on, if I could have cloned you guys in terms of that raw ability, I would have just put you in the cloning machine and gone, give them all different voices, but do exactly the same thing. So yeah, there was, as well as having all of the really good DJs, that were coming from Freeze and Likes and other stations as well. Like I was pinching DJs from other stations. I think a few DJs might come from Flex as well. I think like EJB and Uno might have been doing Flex and that. I think Jack Daniels, a couple of others, they all wanted to kind of, because they saw that it was doing the right thing. And then, that evolved, got a nice base of DJs. It was a nice mix. Some people might say there were some shit DJs on there that didn't deserve to be on there. But I liked giving people opportunities. Like, I didn't like saying no to people when they were proper. Like, there were some proper people hammering me to get on that station. I'd have to turn them down because just didn't have any space. And it was at that moment where people wanted a show, right, but didn't want to do graveyard. Do you know that kind of, I want a show on radio, but I'm not willing to do 2 a.m. So you want it, but you don't want it.
Yep.
So they were always the people that, like, I kind of said, look, if something comes up and I can work and I think you're up to standard, then something comes up. But when I got really busy, I was saying that all I can offer you is 2 till 4 or in the morning. And I remember people like Natty Baseline. Do you remember Natty Baseline? Nutter. Like, I love the geezer, crazy as fuck. But he would just say to me, Steve, I'll do whatever show you give me. Like, if you let me come up 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll go through till 8 a.m. until the next DJ comes in. Yeah. And I think maybe Brazil and Midget Man. Yep. They might have turned up at the studio and probably Natty was a kip on the floor.
Yeah, on a Sunday morning. That's definitely happened.
Yeah.
Do you know who else used to do late nights? It was really, really, really good.
Spooky. Boom. Boom. Spooky. So again, props to Spooky, like salute, because like Pioneer,
one of the best grime DJs in the country by a mile.
Producer as well, mate. Like he knocks out beats like I Have Food, and they're all like of a standard. You know what I mean? He is probably he does get recognised well in that scene. By the scene, but people outside the scene probably don't realise how influential Spooky is. So Spooky, salute to you, brother. I loved his little late night madness shows on Image. He would come in like midnight and he would roll on a Wednesday night. I swear it's like a Wednesday night. He would roll till 3, 4, 5 in the morning. I think there was times where who was the guy that used to do the morning shows? Breakfast shows, used to play like a bit of reggae and that. He would come in and Spooky would still be there until 7, 8 o'clock in the morning doing his thing. And that's the kind of, that's where Spooky should get like more respect than he deserves, because man will grind them shifts, but will still do a good job of doing them. Yeah. Whereas people will just turn their nose up at that and go, that ain't for me. Well, if you want to be real and serious about radio and get a break, then sometimes you have to look at people like Spooky and say, my man's still doing that, and he is big. He was big back then.
Yep.
And I'm talking 10 years ago, but he would have no way about coming up doing a show at 12 till morning, because he knew it was relevant.
Yeah, and he kept things fresh as well. I remember going there to do, I don't know when it was, but you asked me to do a cover show. It might have even been like, it might have even been like a 10 till 12 in the daytime. And I think I went up there and Spooky was there in the morning and he was playing old school garage vinyls, like Rip Groove and that. And he was just in there, just loving life. Like, he didn't care. I was like, right. He was so versatile anyway, but yeah, with his grime stuff, like, mate, it just
he was really educated. Like, he was super educated and he knew his shit, and he's a shit hot DJ as well. And yeah, I think he deserves everything that he's achieved, because like, he's one of the people that when I reflect, when I do have the little moments of reflection, he's one of the guys that jumps out to me, because like, he was on the grind.
Yeah,
like he was like he and DJs would, and this is going back to like, DJs would be like, oh, I want to get on the station. And I'd say that it was maybe a 12 till 2, or we want to come and do 6 till 8 in the morning to do early breakfast. And they'd be turning their noses up on it, but you'd have Spooky coming in. And so then people kind of never really went back into the black book or top of the, right, who do I give a shout to when a slot comes up, or if a cover show comes up, and, right, here's your golden opportunity to jump on and show me what you got. But that station, like that, it blew big, and it was a really, really great feeling. But it was also, like I say, it was hard for me because I was doing it all by myself, and obviously the event started to pick up quite quickly, and I had people left, right, and centre wanting piece of the pie. And like, I'm not going to go into it, but there were numerous people that were talking about like investing and throwing serious, significant money into it. But I was like cautious, like, you know, I said it to people, like, I trust people, but I'd also learned not to trust people to some extent, if you know what I mean. So I'd rather do it myself, if you know what I mean, than to team up with someone that I'm not sure about or I'm not 100% committed to working with. So, you know, there was quite a few people that threw some money at me and said, look, here's dough, get involved. And I turned it down. And, you know, maybe that was a bad thing to do. Maybe it weren't, but it had a really good ride. Ice Cold smashed it. Like, the event started to pick up, you know. Shouts out to Ollie C, Dreamos, of course. Like, me and Dreamos mainly. We started doing a little night called Lavish. It was a little night. It was at a club called Libertaire in Acton High Street. So the race station was on and it was doing its thing quite well. And I thought,
you could come out of the studio and you could piss out of the doorstep and hit Libertaire.
Literally, yeah. You could spit and hit Libertaire, truth be told. So yeah, it was like the perfect spot to get in. And what's the guy's name? Jake. He was running Libertaire at the time, or he was kind of the face of the club at the time, and we managed to get. I think Alan, wasn't Mr. Alan T. Shout out to Alan T. and May as well. Oh, what's his DJ name again?
Dave Butler.
Dave Butler, yeah, and it was Alan as well.
It was Alan May, yeah, Flirter, yeah.
Flirter, that's it, yeah, Flirter. So I think they were doing a couple of little bits and bobs in there, and I don't know, but anyway, like,
yeah, they did a lot of the Plush and Funky events. A lot of them were there.
Yeah, so I think I actually remember going to them. I'm thinking, because I remember the DJ box was like high at the back, and you needed to hoist your records up, or if you had records, because it was quite high. Anyway, we got in there and we started talking to Jake, and he was like, "Yeah, cool, look, I'll give you a night." And I'll be honest, I don't know what happened to that club, but it was never that busy. Like, we did a couple of nights in there and we got a few people in it. But I think, and props to Alan as well, but I think Alan smashed the granny out of that place, because his nights in there seemed to be the only nights that were really successful. And that's maybe because he had a good crowd. Like, Alan worked hard to build up his crowd. I remember going to Palais for one of Alan's nights, or when he was running Palais, and he packed that place out. Like, I was like, fucking salute, bruv. So yeah, I think Alan was probably one of the only people that really got Libertaire popping, and we tried, and like, it was great to get the opportunity to go in there and do our thing, and to try and start something rolling. But I don't know. Maybe Jay, you're from your side. It just never seemed to pop, that club. I think there was always more drama than there was success of that club, if you ask me. So it just didn't work out. And then
Acton as well, not necessarily the go-to venue. Whereas, obviously, you know, we're going to talk about it now, but moving to Blag, Notting Hill, Ladbroke Grove, like, that was the fashionable place, especially that little bit there where Blag was, because you had them other clubs down on the corner there by Trellick. Like, I was DJing at M-Bars down there years before I was even on Ice Cold.
Yeah.
And then you had what then became the Playhouse, and so many little gaffs around that.
Yeah, road. It was a little, and you still had obviously the legacy of it being like quite a vibrant and like a quite, you know, I don't know what the word is, but it's
there's just a buzz around an area like that.
It just had something. You know, you had the legacy of things like Subterranea. Around the corner, Acton Road. So like, you know, Notting Hill Carnival, you know, so there was just something about that area that just had something about it. And you know what, to be honest, props to with me and Gav and Ollie, like, Ollie was in that manner, like, so we had a great person. So was Gav. Gav was like, Dreamos was always kind of based in that manner. And, you know, I had the concept and I had a bit of money to throw into it. So between the three of us, like, when we got offered Blag, which was actually the Notting Hill one, first of all, you know, the one on the main road, the little tiny fucking box.
Do you want to know a story? Do you want to know a story about that gaff there? right? So
Yeah,
me,
go on.
Eamon, and Spenny did a night there. I think it was on a
Yeah.
Boxing Day
Big
around.
up Spenny.
Yeah, we did a night there on Boxing Day. I think Spinny B might have come down and done it with us. And basically, I think 12 people who were there that night, including me and Spenny, all got norovirus.
No way.
Yeah, we were shitting and puking
Wow.
for like 3 or 4 days
Oh,
afterwards, bro. Ruined New Year's Eve for me
so
completely.
washing the glasses or something like that.
Mate, it's either that or one person came in there with it and just sweated on someone,
And
and do you know
just
what I mean?
straight. Oh,
Yeah,
great.
mate. Absolutely. I remember
Oh,
Spenny talking about it. He's like, oh, bro, I've been throwing up and everything for days. He's like, we didn't even drink that much. I was like, bro, I didn't even drink. And I've been like
wow.
just on the horrors, mate. And then I remember seeing
Oof.
girls on their BBM status going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm so ill. And I'm like, oh my God, we were all in the same place.
Yeah, it's done the rounds. It's done the rounds, isn't it? Someone's
But yeah, that
being
blag
the
was shit. That
being the
blag was shit.
specimen, eh?
The one down towards
Yeah.
Holland Park, Kensington Olympia, that was
So
decent.
Holland Gardens, yeah. So I think what first happened is that I think I did a night called like, I don't know, Cold as Ice or Stay Cool or something like that, just tying in the name. And I'll tell you a funny story. So we got heat for that. And you got to remember, this is Russell Gardens, 150 people club. It's not Vauxhall, it's not Fire and Light Box. And the guy from Black, what's his name? Pierce. I can't remember his name now. Pierce something. I don't think he's about anymore. I think he's gone. He moved somewhere else. But anyway, he phoned me up and said, "We have to cancel the night, Steve." And I'm like, "What the fuck? You want to be cancel the night?" Like, it's a week away. I think it was a Christmas do as well. It's around Christmas time. He said, "I've had a phone call from no, it wasn't a phone. I've had a letter from Ofcom saying that you're associating your club with pirate radio." And I was like, wow, like so, and that also rang a bell with me that maybe I was bigger than I thought we are because you know, I just saw the station from the inside, if you know what I mean. I was running it from I didn't really see like all of the areas talking about it and whatnot. So maybe, you know, maybe in Ofcom's mind, it was like, well, let's just nip it in the bud because I was starting to get a bit big. But I remember them saying we're going to have to pull it. So I remember changing the name or something. And that was maybe before Lavish came about. That was kind of an initial one. And I think Gavin and I had a conversation. Let's see if we can get Black Club again, but let's see if we can get Kensal Road, 222 Kensal Road. I still got some Lavish adverts. I found so much Ice Cold and Image radio recordings on an old hard disk. I sat here on a Sunday and listened to them for most of the day. My wife was annoyed with me because my kids were just ignored for the whole day because I was just trawling through podcasts. But I'm going to upload some more of them soon. So anyway, me and Gavin got so let's get into Kensal. We got into Kensal and like Lavish was on. And yeah, I think again, it was just a good mix. Like I was willing to promote it, work it, plug it, had the station. Ollie and Gav were local baseline, you know, in the zone, so I had a good connection for a local perspective, and it just worked. And like pretty quickly, Lavish was the one to be at Kensal Road. I think even what's his name? Was it Nick Doe? Nick Doe was doing nights there, yeah. And even he was like, and he was doing pretty well there. But even you saw the change from his nights to our nights being kind of more popular. And yeah, that got some interest. You know, we ended up once we picked that up. You know, we did. I think one of the proudest moments for me in terms of the Lavish brand was I think you might gig that night. It was a New Year's Eve night we did there. Not sure if you did gig there, but
I did.
In 09, I think it was.
I did a New Year's Eve I think I missed 09, but I did it.
So yeah,
I did the Vauxhall one.
The Vauxhall one was that was anyway, I could tell you some stories about that, but that was a tough grind, that one for me personally.
Yeah.
But anyway, we did the Lavish the year before in there and we fucked the place up. Like I was running around on like 2 days before New Year and I had like my last batch of tickets. And I was promising other people that I'll save you some, don't worry, I'll save you some. And I'm looking at these tickets going, I've got money here right now, people calling me left, right, and centre going, you drop me some tickets, but I've also got the nearest and dearest, your regulars that are going, I'll save you a ticket and like that. I remember like 2 days before, I'm down to like 15 tickets. And I'm phoning Gavin. I'm like, how many you got left, Gavin? He's like, I've got like a handful. I'm like, Ollie, how many you got left? He's like, mine are all gone. And I'm like, we've filled it from the pre-sales alone. And we've promised a load of other people to save tickets for them. So I remember running around and just going, I'm not going to sell any more tickets. I'm just going to stop selling them because we're done. We're good. And that was a mad night in there, a new year. And that really gave me the belief that we could go on to do bigger and bigger. And yeah, we did. Like, we took it to Vauxhall. So I think we got involved with Trinity. So we did a Trinity, It's a London thing, down in Hidden in Vauxhall, 333, whatever else it was called over the years.
Channel Club, yeah.
Channel Club, yes, that was the one before them all. Again, I think it was through Scott Garcia. Big up Scott. He kind of sort of reached out, and again, I think Scott was doing some again, like, you know, we had like Scott Garcia on the station doing shows. We had Martin Lana, the underrated DJ, the most underrated DJ, who's probably one of the best DJs that ever walked this planet. And I would measure him. He's might have something to say about it, but Spinny B, like Don, Badman.
Spoke to him the other day about coming on the podcast as well. So big up Spinny.
You got to get him on, man. Like, I bet he's got some stories from his younger days with his mum dropping him off at ice. That must have been funny for him. But yeah, excellent DJ, you know, real quality. You know, big up Spinny M as well. Like, kind of jealous of Spinny because he's got some tune selection, bruv. Like, pisses me off at times. Even when I kind of occasionally go on Twitter. I'm not a big social media guy. Like, I'm just in my little family bubble now. I just do my own thing. But when I do flick on Twitter and have a preset, and Spenny's put some selection, I'm going, all right, let me find out what this tune is. And it's an absolute banger. And I'm like, nothing's changed there. Spenny's still pulling them out of the bag. Big up Spenny. I hope you're doing well, man. I know he's had some challenging times, but love to you and your family, mate. So yeah, like, it all just kind of started happening, but it happened fast. Like, it went from 0 to 140 miles an hour in the space of like a year. So yeah, the following year, Lavish was then, the station was doing really well, big names left, right and centre, good mix of sort of local and new talent wanted to come through, trying to find that balance, trying to put the parties on, trying to get a new website, trying to keep the stream quality high, trying to keep the station on with some challenges. Like, it was a lot for like me, myself and I to take on. It did take its toll sometimes. There were days where, like, you know, a lot of people would say, oh, when you're doing radio, it's not a job. But like, I was going to bed at 2:00 after locking up, 2 a.m. And my wife will bear witness. She used to hate me because I would be lying in bed at midnight and I'd be setting my alarm for 2 a.m. And I'd go down to the studio and lock up because I was one of them people that I had to lock up. I didn't want to just leave it for DJs. Not that I didn't trust them, but I knew that if a DJ was a bit lazy, that would be the worst time. And he actually ended up biting me on the arse. So I used to go down and then I used to be up at 7 a.m. and I'd be down in the studio at 7 a.m. opening up or doing breakfast myself because we were at that point where, like, I felt we needed to have breakfast DJs. And big up Dale Ridds because he was like one of the guys that started doing breakfast shows, and a few others that kind of really made me realise, like, we need to have breakfast DJs on. This needs to go from 7 a.m. till 2 in the morning. So like, I was grafting, I was planning nights, like keeping an eye on the station left, right and centre, paying all the bills. And boy, there were some bills, mate. You wouldn't believe, like, when you're putting the parties on, the cost of running the station. Like, you guys, you used to chew through fucking punch buttons on the CDJs like they were fucking snacks, like fucking buttons. Not playing against Steve, you can't play. Back to the shop, another 50 quid to get another punch button. Fader's gone, mic lead's broken, needle's broken, speaker ain't working, amps put, like, because it was on all the time, the stuff was getting abused, and that came at a cost because you had to keep maintaining it. So there was a lot of moving parts to doing it. And yeah, and we kept pushing, like I said, the Lavish night was doing really well. We did Hidden down there with Trinity, and it was a London thing, and that was quite a good night. But actually, in reflection, I hope none of the guys that were involved in that take this as disrespect, because it wasn't, but I felt our room was the best room of that whole night. We fucked it up, which was the middle blue room. Like, everyone was in that room, it felt like, that night. And I think that the guy that was running the club, Scotty, I think his name was, if I'm not mistaken, he saw that and he was like, right, come and have a chat with me, guys. And next thing you know, we're going from 250 capacity Blag Club to 900, 1200 capacity Hidden in Vauxhall, which is a big leap. But I think we did our own night in there late 2010, I think it was, maybe 2009, I can't remember now quite. And we did all right in there. Like, it was a good night. It wasn't heaving, but it was a good step. Again, we were going in the right direction. I think we got about 700, 800 in there. And it was the first time, now no word of a lie, I think it was the first time where I thought, right, I'm going to walk away with some decent change here. But the cost of the night, again, it was still so break even. Like, we walked away up, but it weren't a lot. Like, it was a bit disappointing because the amount of effort and seeing how many people had enjoyed that night and how many people turned up. And I thought, wow, here comes that Coliseum moment. You know, McMahon's walking out of Coliseum, bags of cash into the Range Rover or whatever. But it didn't quite happen. And then they offered us New Year's Eve. And I lapped up that opportunity to do New Year's Eve because the year before was Moondance.
Yeah.
Was doing New Year's Eve in his, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought, wow, right, we've gone from, you know, Libertaire, dead out, truth be told, not really doing its thing, to Blag Club, to one room in Hidden, to now being offered the whole room in the whole of the club. And I knew that it was going to be risky because it was just me and Gav, basically. And we did a real lot of graft to try and make it work. And I know it's something that you were never keen on, but that's fine, and I get it. But we were working you guys, well, I know I was, to kind of help us get the tickets, because we were taking that massive leap. We were going from, you know, 200-300 people to 1,000 people venues, and the scene had changed. Like, radio, don't get it wrong, like, radio had started to, it just, the Big Dipper, 2010, 2011, so it was becoming a harder grind in terms of listeners and keeping people interactive. So I kind of had to lean on you guys to say, look, I'll give you sets, and I hope you all, you know, I wasn't one of them guys who wouldn't pay people, and I think I was probably
I was sitting there, I was thinking about it,
and let you take some money from the ticket sales as well. Like,
I would literally,
you went both ways.
I was sitting there thinking about it the other day. I was on my way home, and I was sitting there thinking about it, talking about, like, because, you know, these podcasts, I never plan questions, I never do anything like that. But I was thinking back to, like, some of the stuff that went on, and I always, like, I used to think to myself, like, you know, you were one of them people where I remember in particular on that New Year's Eve, I knew when I got there, but, like, mate, I've been around the block enough. Even at a young age, then I'd been around for a long time. I'd done events.
I was sweating.
I got there and I knew you'd had a shit night, and I knew I wouldn't have asked for a penny anyway. But you turned around to me and said,
I don't think it was a shit night.
No, but you'd had a shit night.
I'd hoped it. Yeah. Oh, it was a good night. It was just I had a shock.
I could see it on your face that you were not happy at all, and I wouldn't have asked you for a penny. I just turned up. I was like, "You're right, Steve," and you just looked at me. You said, "How many did you sell?" And I told you a number, and you went, "Right, keep that excess bit and just give me the ticket cost." Boom, and no questions asked. But whenever we were at Blag or something, there'd always be, even if it was a light envelope, you'd always give us something. You'd always be like, "Right, that's your cost," or it'd be like, "Look, boys, I ain't got the cash tonight.
Lots of drinks,
but I ain't got the cash tonight, but don't pay your subs. Don't pay your subs for me." Things like that.
I was never one of them people that was like, because I was a DJ. I'm going back to the very beginning, and I still like DJing, but I couldn't put, like, my own DJ career, which I probably should have done more invested in. I didn't invest in it because I was putting so much time in the station. And like lots of promoters, I probably didn't take the advantage that I should have, because I didn't really care about being a front man. I was never one of them people that was like, I want everyone to shout out my name. I want everyone to know it's me that's running the station, because I didn't really care whether it was known or not that I was doing things. So I would never gig at my own raves or put myself on a flyer. The only real flyer I put was Blag, where I did do a gig, and I didn't generally do like a back-to-back with Ollie, squeeze in a little half an hour between, you know, yourselves or Spinny or Spenny or whoever else was down there, you know. And I probably could have abused that a lot more myself, but I never did, because I was too focused on the bigger picture. But
mate, the other side of things as well.
nice.
The other side of things you got to remember as well is the second you give yourself a, like, you know, say it's like a 12 till 1 set or something in one of the rooms. As soon as you get on to have your first mix, Steve, we've got a problem with this. We need this doing. There's someone at the door that needs, like, mate, I know it from doing events over the years. You never get a moment's fucking peace ever.
Yeah, I suppose Black Club, it did run itself, like, because we were cool with the bar staff, we were cool with the bouncers, we were cool with the club. So like they knew the crack, they knew who not to let in, they knew who to let in. They knew the manor as well, because they were from the manor, a lot of the guys. So they know, like, not tonight, guys, like, you know, you're not going to enjoy it if you've come here for what you've come here for. It's not that night. Yeah. So they would kind of always, like, and they were very respectful, like, big up Dominic, is it Dominico, that was one of the main bouncers at Black, because, like, he was a good guy to have on the side of the Black Club, because he knew that manor, he knew the people, and he would be honest with people, say, like, it's not an R&B night tonight, guys, like, or you're not going to get that much house music. Is a bit more club classics, old school. So, and he was very cool at kind of just like knowing the right people and knowing if people would enjoy themselves in the first place. So it always meant there was a really good vibe in that club. And we tried to kind of continue that with the bigger venues as well. And, you know, as things progressed, we did the Hidden, like I say, and I realised I have done 2 hours already. I'm doing a Henny, sorry. Like, but there's so much to tell. So obviously that built up, and like, I ended up doing New Year's Eve by myself. And again, like, me and Gav, it was a crazy story, and I'm not going to go into it, but like, we just had a little time where I just kind of went, right, let me just get this thing, because I love the guy and I'll never have a bad one, but I felt like he let me down on the one before New Year. And I took it a little bit to heart. I was a little bit like, you left me to deal with it all. And I felt a bit fucked off by that. So I kind of said, look, if you're not serious, I'm going to do it myself. I'll carry on, because I am serious. I'm taking this. And that kind of, we did the New Year's, that wasn't great. And I think we did another one in February, and that was okay. So we did like 4 or 5 nights at Hidden. And on the whole, like, they were all decent nights, but I don't think they ever fulfilled the potential. Maybe I just was stretching myself too thin, because I was trying to do it all. So I couldn't put all of the effort into one thing at one time. So maybe I was kind of, everything was getting a bit of, like, everything was getting something, but everything was getting 50%, but I only had 100% to give. So like, there was always little gaps in like the quality control for me, because I was trying to do it all. But then a couple of random ones came out of the woodwork. So Paul Kay, obviously, got involved with Paul Kay with a couple of events when he was running Wandsworth Palais, was it? I think that might have been a slightly earlier, but that venue never really took off either. That was quite a tough grind as well. And then, you know, there's a few other promoters that we worked with. Big up Paul Kay as well, like, top guy. Was honoured to meet that guy, because he's a proper sound geezer, and he's very down to earth. And like, he did a lot for the scene with, you know, Gas Club and One Night Stand and all that sort of stuff. So it was an honour to work with him, but that venue just never really worked. So we did try to do a few other things with Paul as well. Some of them were all right. And then Tony Mack, just out of nowhere, just phoned me, and I don't even know how he got my number. But he's like, I want to put my exposure out. I'm putting exposure back on for like a little thing. And straight away, my brain went, Link, you know, like, knew the history, knew what he was all about, know he's a serious guy. But I didn't rush the convo with Tony. Like, I knew where I thought it could go pretty quickly, because I knew Tony and I knew his history, and obviously, like Ricky's alluded to as well in his chat. So I said, look, no, give me your advert, mate. I won't charge you an arm and a leg, you know, 50 quid. I'll stick it on for you. Knowing that was a good icebreaker to say, look, I'm not here to take the piss, you know what I mean? But obviously everyone's got to eat. So I did that thing for him. And again, like, adverts, like, there were times when we were running adverts like this is, you know, when you're big, when you have to run adverts every hour. I'm sorry, guys. Like, big up all the DJs that had to tolerate every hour adverts back in when it was ridiculous. I remember Christmas, I had like 45 minutes of adverts, and the only way I didn't want to take the piss now, 45 minutes of adverts, because no one would be listening to the station coming under the adverts. So I kind of split them, which was a pain for you guys, but, you know, I had to pay the bills, and got to do what you got to do. But yeah, with so many adverts at the station, I had to put them on every hour. But I never took the piss with adverts. Like, it was only like 50 quid, you know, £100 here's. If I didn't know you and you were new to the thing, you know, I'd take a few bob. But we did really well. Like, the station did great. The nights were going well. Everything was cool. We was doing our thing, and yeah, it was bobbling along nicely.
You had a big hand in our event as well. So when we
the passion thing,
so I wanted to
the passion, legendary.
Yeah, so me and Eamon were speaking about it when he came on the podcast, and it was quite funny because he was probably the main reason for the success of it, based on being local to Pimlico and everything else.
His manner,
yeah. So that was obviously the main reason. And Spenny gave me a guest list of 80 people, which was fucking insane. But
he does it every time, man. Just pulls out 80 names.
Eamon didn't realise where the link came from, and it came from the guys that ran the other room. I go way back with them, and blah blah blah. And basically, I remember speaking to Tom Upton from Flawless, and he just said to me, he's like, "Yeah, you know, we usually do like a room 2, because basically they were talking about booking me for the main room for just to do a birthday set, pretty much, because we're old mates." And I said, oh, out of curiosity, what happens to that second room? Like, do you have co-promoters in that? And he went, yeah, we did have someone, but they were a bit shit and they never really sold any tickets, so we're kind of just gonna like maybe put someone in there and you can mill around. And I went, look, it's my birthday, I'm part of a radio station, we've already got events, like, let me ask and see if Steve's happy to, you know, at least plug it on the station and get a couple of DJs involved. I've rung Eamon and I was like, right, do you think it's a good idea? I'll talk to Steve. And then I spoke to you and you were like, yeah, fuck it, mate, putting a radio name on the flyer, cool, done, yeah, no problem. And mate, that first one, my birthday, was absolutely ridiculous. Crazy.
I remember. Forgive me, you might have told the story because obviously you've probably had a fair few people about it. But wasn't there one geezer that was jumping on the speakers that was going to get?
It was Alan T. It was Alan T.
It wasn't Alan, was it?
Yeah, it was. So basically,
getting old. It was going fuck off and smashing and going wild.
We were talking about it because basically one of Eamon's mates, he was, you know, it sounds silly when you say it because it sounds like a macho nonsense thing, but he was literally a professional MMA fighter that fought for UC MMA.
Right.
And he was like one of the hardest bastards in Pimlico. Like, you don't want to mess with this geezer.
Yeah.
And basically, Alan's on top of the speaker while we're DJing, and he's doing the funky chicken, and he's going, fuck off. Like that. So this geezer's looked at Eamon and he's looked at him all calm and he's gone, Eamon, do I need to move him? And Eamon's like, no, he's our mate. It was really just like calm and deadpan, like, does he need to go or what? And it was like, no.
I actually remember, right, coming down to that and getting to the door and getting told you ain't coming in.
Yep.
I swear one of you guys had to come and say, no, like, please, like, and I come down because I just wanted to see what it was all about. I thought, you know what, I've put my name on it, I'll let you guys do your thing. And I think that's what I was always all about, was like, I wasn't there to hinder people doing their thing. You know, I know people that have said, you want to put your name on the flyer, if you want to put your thing, then pay me. But I was just looking at getting out there. So to me, like, it had its own rewards in other ways. So I went to come see it. I remember being at the door and the guy was just like, sorry, mate. And I'm like, but, like a little bit. It was like, it's gone 10 p.m. I'm like, 10 p.m? What are you on about 10 p.m, man? Fucking the club don't even open till 10 p.m. Talking about you can't come in. I think either you or Eamon or someone came down and just said, no, he's got to come in. Like, he's one of the guys that's helped us plug it. And I came upstairs and I was like, raw, fucking hell. It's like, it's still pretty early and it was heaving in there. Like, I'm sure you lot must have, because there was drink everywhere. Like, you were buying them bottles behind the bar. I'm telling you that for nothing.
Episode 10 for anyone who's interested. Episode 10, you hear the story.
Okay, I haven't listened to them all. I have focused on the radio ones. You know,
mate, honestly, on episode 10, on episode 10 with Mr. E, we told a full story of how we went there during the day to plug in a mixer and do a sound check with like hold-all bags. Full of imported vodka that I'd got from my mum's pub, so we didn't even fucking pay for that.
Truth be told, mate, it happened at Blag as well. We used to do the same thing, and there was a few bottles sneaking in left, right, and centre. You've got to keep people sweet, innit? But yeah, they were great nights down there. And like, it's a shame because you did like 3 or 4 nights down there, didn't you? And then what happened? Did they just stop doing their gigs? Because
Yeah, so what happened was is they gave us the one in October, which was my birthday. So obviously we sold that out. We sold more than we had.
if I'm right, I can still remember it. 5th of October, where?
It was in October. Yeah, I can't remember the exact date, but my birthday is October. So yeah, it was like around mine and Spenny's birthday. So Spenny had a guest list of 80.
Yeah.
Me and Eamon went into the pub round the corner on the night with
That's
100
normal.
tickets and walked out with no tickets, just in the pub.
Yeah, bash that little one on the just by where the road splits.
Yeah. So yeah, we done at least 200 people we had in that little tiny room upstairs, and we had more downstairs. And then so basically they gave us that one, and then the next one was January, which was a real slog.
Tough gig.
And then the next one was a February, and they done a weird one in the February. They promoted like an all-female DJ lineup downstairs, and for whatever, I think if they did it now, that would smash it. But for whatever reason, then it wasn't really a marketing tool. So, but we done all right in our room, and then we done one in April that just wasn't good for any of us, and then they lost it. So, but the funny thing was, is about a year or two. No, but my mate got married in 2013, so I was on my mate's stag do in Wimbledon, and I went into this bar in Wimbledon. We were just doing a bit of a bar crawl, and the geezer who ran the gaff was Sam, who ran Pasha. And basically, I was talking to him, and he was like, "Jay, how you doing? Blah blah blah. Yeah, no, you guys always had that upstairs room rocking, rah, rah, rah." So I'm standing there talking to him in this bar in Wimbledon, and this bar in Wimbledon was like the first bar I ever played in as a kid. Like I knew the gaff inside out. I could have packed it out. So I said to him, I was like, "Oh, Sam, like basically, like I'm local to round here. Like all of my pals are from round here. I went to school here in Rains Park. Like I know everyone. Like you've seen what we can do. Yeah, give me a night here." And it'll be great. And he's like, "Yeah, we've had a bit of trouble." And I was like, "No, my mates are no trouble." As I've said it, bottle, bang! One of my mates has done someone around the head.
No,
and I'm like, "Fucking idiot!" Like, and we've all got kicked out.
Sell it for you.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was
literally, you couldn't have timed it better. No, we're no trouble.
Always someone else, isn't it? With a ping, bounces and spirals through the bar. No, there's nothing worse than that, is there? That's one of the things you've always got to be careful of, isn't it? Is that like. We've all got that gremlin in us, haven't we? And it's very easy to pivot and turn into that madman. No matter how good of pals they are, sometimes you just got to go, "Oh, for fuck's sake, why are you even my friend?" No, but there were good nights down Pasha, and like ultimately, overall that station was really strong and was doing really well, and. Like everything was going in the right direction. Like I say, Tony Mac was talking about doing some exposure nights with him, and I was keen because, like again, like we've alluded to, like just the promoting became a bit more of a focal point. Like I was like, radio ticks over, but radio ain't paying me. Like it never did pay me, and it never will because I didn't expect it to. But so I wanted to get the promoting a bit bigger. But then some stuff happened. We tried to do some stuff with Tony, but we got Coliseum again, and the Coliseum was a big venue, but it was a slog. It's a tough venue to pack because it's a big venue. And the owners of that place, they want paying, and they want paying well, which is fair play because it consumes. It's a small city almost. So there was loads of good things happening. But then obviously the name change of the station, which is kind of mad in itself. But before we do that, I wanted to tell you that story about Funky.
Yeah. So we had the guys from People Just Do Nothing before they were big. It was a YouTube series. It was a really small YouTube series, and it is still out there. Yeah, and they came down to basically
online webisodes. Yeah.
So basically, what it was is Frenzy, who used to play after us. He went to college.
Big on night shift.
Yeah. So he went to college with DJ Beats, like the guy DJ Beats from People Just Do Nothing, and they were trying to come down and do a radio show somewhere, but they didn't have anywhere. And just because he had that link, they were like, "Yeah, sweet, we'll come down to Ice Cold." And this is what I say to people about them boys as well. Like they never bit off the culture. They mock who they mock, and they've done what they've done. We get it, but they were doing like Scandal FM with like Nut and people like that years and years ago. So they've been around.
So they're not just jumping on a scene. They were part of the scene. But
so they came down and they done a show. And what happened was that was when they'd done the episode.
Drama, man.
They'd done the episode with the track "Get Out of the Way, Get Out of the Way," Funky's getting shot, and they did it live on. But do you know that there was a couple of funny bits of that set before we tell the Funky story. There's a couple of funny bits. There's one where C-Part, MC Grinder, there was a bottle of Corona on the side, and he didn't realize it had a faggot in it, and he drank it, and Shabuddy called it on the camera as he did it. Oh mate, it was wrong. But the other bit was
legendary.
Halfway through the set, for whatever reason, right, me and Eamon were there, and I don't know if it was me or Eamon that was just about to have a drink, and you know when it's that perfect moment where you choke on your drink, for whatever reason, Grinder's gone, "Dreams can come true, give me the mic and let me check 1 2," and I just went because it just fucking done me. It was just so funny.
I wish I was there.
So yeah, they did Get Out of the Way, Get Out of the Way, Funky's getting shot, and then Steve rings me a couple of days later and tells me this.
So yeah, bar being electrocuted in that little studio, which was the other thing that you had to be very careful of if you weren't getting soaked by Jada Buddha's drink splatter. Do you remember getting shocks touching the ceiling?
I literally, it's funny. I've just finished recording tonight an episode with Max Britton, and we were talking about that studio. My mate Alex Madden came in that studio, and he was talking on the mic when we were interviewing him, and he's about 6'4", and he just touched it. And you could hear him on the mic go, anyway, "What's that?"
Yeah, that was a dangerous place, but we live and learn. So anyway, long story short, well, let's get onto this one. So obviously the PDJN guys were doing the show, so I said the wrong way around there. They came down to do this guest show, and obviously, I'll be honest, I think you'd run it past me, or one of the guys said they wanted to come down. And I think a few weeks before, they actually brought the film crew down, because it'd been commissioned by BBC after the webisodes, and they actually said they were talking about using the studio, and I think they reached out to a couple of other stations as well, to kind of to use as maybe a filming, and they came down and they had the film crew, and I think they had like some BBC people that kind of what's it called, the researchers and all of that, coming down, and they did a thing, and I was like, cool, you know what, if you want to do it, as long as you can do it in a time that isn't going to take the radio off air, which means after midnight, then you're cool. Or if you want to do a guest show and use some filming and all of that, then I'm all for it, because like I say, I just wanted the station to be noticed, and associating with that would have been a great thing. But yeah, so the guys came down to the show, and they did the Funky's getting shot. Now, what kicked it off was, I still remember it clearly, and I can't remember if I was like doing a bit of part-time work, because again, the radio wasn't bringing in tons of dough, so I was still grafting on the side. I was down in Hammersmith somewhere, and I remember Paul Kay phoned me. I'm sure it was Paul Kay, or it was either Paul or Tony. I can't remember now because it's a long time ago. And they're like, "Who the fuck are these guys on the radio? I've just had Funky on the phone to me, telling me he's coming to the studio now. If they want to shoot him, they better be prepared, because he'll be outside the studio with a shooter in 5 minutes." And I was like, what? So I don't even know if I had the radio with me or whatever. I can't remember the details. And I'm thinking, nah, Paul, no. I think he's getting it twisted. I don't think he realised. Maybe it was because it was Chinese whispers a little bit, but obviously the Funky in question didn't realise that this was a piss take, and it actually was just a piss take. It just so happened that Funky was called Funky, and the song was Funky's Getting Shot, which was a piss take of the other thing that we won't talk about because of not worth mentioning. So I remember how Paul phoned me, and I said, "Look, give me his number, give me my number, mate, and let me phone him." So I get the number, I phone him, and I go, yeah, Steve from some Ice Cold, whatever. What's cracking, man? Like, what's your problem? He's like, "I'll tell you now, I'll come down the studio, and if he wants to shoot me, tell him he better be prepared, because I'll be down there." And I said to him, "Geez, you do realise this is a piss take?" And he was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" I was like, "They're not mugging you off." And I was pretty certain that between that call, jumped on the radio and realised who was on the radio, because I don't actually think I was aware that you guys were down, even though you may have preempted me or whatever. Just didn't maybe click at the time. And then I phoned him and he's like, you know what, if you want to get guns involved, if you want to talk about shooting, mate, I'll be down there in no time. And I'm like, geez, chill, these guys are piss takers. And he's like, yeah, they're taking the fucking piss out of me. And I'm like, no. And the geezer was so, I think, and bless Funky at the time, he was obviously raging because someone's, he's taken it completely out of context of what it is, because he doesn't understand the mockumentary that it's all based on. And he was raging down the phone at me like, yeah, I'm going to come down. And honestly, I had to say to him, look, I'm going to call you back because like I can't talk to you right now, because even though I've told you like it's not a serious thing, they're not shouting you out, they're not going to shoot you, this is a piss take, like watch the TV in a couple of weeks, whatever. It just wasn't registering with him. He just wanted war. Like he was ready for war. And like that stressed me out at the time, because I'm like trying to do all of these things to promote the station, get it big, and now I've got this geezer saying he's going to come down to the studio with guns and start popping off shots, and he doesn't get that it's a mockumentary, but trying to tell him that it's a mockumentary ain't registering, because all he hears is his name being called out. Oh, it was I was going to say really odd, it was an absolute nightmare. But funny as fuck. Especially when I was nowhere near the radio as well. So I was hearing it on the radio and I was thinking, well, if I was called Funky and I didn't understand this, I'd be raging as well. But in the end, I think I thought him Paul or Tony, but I can't remember who it was. I'm sure it was Paul K. I said, Paul, look, talk to him, like, because it's not him, it's a piss take. And then it all dispersed and the geezer realised it was all funny. And then he actually talked to me about, oh, can I come down and do a show? And they're like, it's gone from, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to fucking do you, you want some, I'll give it to you, Willesden Raider style, to, oh, maybe I'll come and do a show. Right, I get it now. Paul's told me about it, blah, blah, blah. And it went from like peak fucking war to, maybe I'll come and do a show, pal. And it was all cool and it was all blew over. And I think, I could be wrong, but I remember speaking to Paul not long after, because I think the first episode wasn't long after that.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, which was actually on BBC Three. And then Paul said to me, oh, mate, now it all makes sense. Because I don't think Paul really realised, because he was a bit, but he was taking my word on what it was all about. But yeah, it was really funny. I just remember being in Bush, Hammersmith, and going, what am I supposed to tell this geezer? He's not having a bar of it. He's just not having it. He just thinks he's getting called out and he's going to go wild. But all's well that ends well. And it was great to have them down. Because they've smashed it as well. Fair play to them guys. Big up Steve's original, like great writing skills. He's made a great series of them guys have sort of smashed it. I'm hoping that is that movie coming out soon. Hopefully,
it is. Yeah. People just do nothing. Corrupt a film big in Japan
last year. Yeah. I'd love to see that movie. That would make me. I'm sure I will be creasing up. I just love people just do nothing. I just love the way they did everything about that show and the way they mocked it. Yeah, like it was perfection. It was like, I still remember saying one of the episodes of it where he says, I'll come down the studio, my wife and kids, my husband. And like when I heard that, I was like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's absolutely perfect. So fair play to them guys. They hit the nail on the head with that. I will kill everybody. We'll move on. So that was a fun time to be alive.
I will say this though. I will say this: if Funky, if you're listening, if you did come down the studio that day, you would have been in trouble, because your buddy G was there, and he would have made you tap out.
He had the heat. Yeah, he had the heat, which was some dodgy heaters he had knocked off from Western International Market. It was a great time to be alive. And thoroughly stressful though. But reflecting back on it, like just couldn't get through to the geezer. It was a piss take, and no calling him out. But it was what it was. But yeah, good times. Like there was so many fun times. There was some serious stories. Like when we moved around to the other studio, the nicer studio, where things ramped up again to the next level, and we kind of got a little bit more serious. And obviously the name change happened. I can go into if you want, but like it was what it was. I just resurrected Image due to a situation. So from nowhere, obviously, you've got to remember, I've been doing that station by myself for the best part of 2 years, 2.5 years, on with Todd, smashing it out, getting it big, rolling. And maybe in myself, I'd forgotten the reason that we initially put it back on was a bit of a fuck you to the DTI of saying, you can do that, you can take one of the team away, but just carrying on. And maybe I did lose sight of that, and maybe that's what blurred my thinking when it all changed. So basically, Charlie and Gary just suddenly reappeared from nowhere, like just boom, just turned up in the studio, and we're like, yeah, so like we want to get back involved, and like, you know, they were talking like, we'll throw some dough at it, and this, that, and the other. But to me, I maybe I saw it wrong, and maybe I was just like, in my little world, I put so much time and effort into this, I almost don't want to let it go. And again, I was just that guy. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it myself. I don't care. I won't need anyone. I've done this. I've come this far with it. I'll carry on going. And it just felt like and again, it was just my side of the perception of it. And maybe I was completely wrong and didn't read it very well at all. But it felt like it was almost like, give us it back now, Steve. You've had it for a couple of years.
Yeah. Now it's big. Now it's big. I want it back.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. You know, there were situations that, again, I'm not going to go into because it's not my place to talk about, where that if there were things that happened, they would have been probably part of the journey still. But in my mind, I was like, I've invested a significant amount of money, and I'm not talking like getting that station where it was, and the investment I made was up to that point as well, especially with some of the other things where I'd taken hits, was probably 10 grand. Little old me, my pocket, you know, and I wasn't earning massive amounts of money, and I was working on the side as well to keep it all ticking over. It felt like it was like, we'll come back in, but ultimately we're going to take it back over, and then I'll, you know, see you later. So the only thing that really associated was the name to the guys, and so in my head, I was like, I put so much effort into this station in terms of investment studios, rigs, parties, block setups, internet streams, websites, all of the other stuff that comes with it. I've put so much. The only thing that really is a legacy now is the name, and I could give the name back, if you know what I mean. So rather than kind of get into a three-way dispute about how things run going forward, I just wanted to carry on doing my thing. So I said, look, truth be told, the only thing that's yours is the name. You can quite happily have the name back, but I want to carry on this journey, and I want to do it myself. So I did, and I just brought Image back. And literally overnight, like I had a few people say to me, that was just ridiculous. You just literally changed the name in the space of a week. I think there was a week where I said to you guys, just don't say a station name, because I was getting everything prepared. I was getting jingles made. I was getting a quick website locked up. I was getting some media made and bits and bobs left, right, and centre. So like within that week, it went from ice cold, a week of no name, to Image Radio.
And then we had a meeting. Do you remember we used to have the meetings in the pub over the road? And you literally,
get pissed up. Yeah. God, sorry.
You literally just we all went in there. You got in touch with everyone after that week, and you were like, right, radio meeting, everyone in the pub tomorrow. Boom, everyone turned up, and you went, right, here's the story. Charlie's back. This geezer's back. Boom, boom, boom. What's the name? Give him the name, and that's it. Done. We're not ice cold anymore. We're now Image, and that's it. And got a new studio come in, and we definitely no longer say the frequency on air, because there were some people that were still saying 103 or whatever.
It's a weird one, because someone is like, frequencies matter, because Ofcom used to record that shit, and that was one of the things they could use to say you are an FM station, you're not internet because you're saying 103. So it could tie you into things. So it was, for me, it was just like, just don't say the dial. People are listening to the dial. They don't need to be told the dial they're listening to, because they're listening to it, you know. Like, it's weird because we all used to do it. Yeah, you're locked into, you know, 981 or 979 or 100.3 or whatever. But people are listening to that dial. They know the fucking number they're listening to. You don't need to tell them. So yeah, we dropped all that. We kind of focused a bit on the internet side as a kind of brand. And I remember like Facebook was popping at that time. Like we had to, do you remember the computers I had all set up with a Facebook? Like, well, I had 2 Facebook groups, like 10,000 friends in them. I remember like coming to the studio after certain shows, and there was like 7,000 comments in a 2-hour window of people. And it may have only been a hub of maybe 100 or so people, but that community was strong. Do you know what I mean? They were. I would rather have 200 people that followed us everywhere than 1,000,000 people that came once and never came back, if you know what I mean. Because you can always build on that thing. So, but there were days, like Facebook popping ridiculous amounts, and you could definitely tell, again, you could see that pivot from traditional pirate radio to online media, because Facebook was the thing where people got in touch now. It was Facebook, it was Twitter, it was crap. And the phone was less so. It was still like, you could still, if you worked it, I remember me and Gav doing some Friday shows for Lavish warm-up parties, easily get 100 missed calls in 15 minutes. And some people would go, we could get that in 10 minutes or 5 minutes back in the day. But you've got to remember where we were in terms of the transition between traditional FM and the kind of online. And then we'd have like 7,000 messages and 600 likes on a Facebook post. So it was popping, it was doing good, and everything was running sweet. And I was all over just continuing and pushing it. And yeah, it was everything was going in the right direction. And I just think my biggest downfall was, there was the word complacency breeds contempt. Was I was, and maybe I was stretched, maybe I was just a bit lazy at times, or a bit tired. There's just a lot of things going on with day to day. But I'd got a little bit less on the ball in terms of locking up at night. I'd started to allow. The station had regular, the DJs were regular, the people I felt I could trust, and none of them are at fault for the shit that went down. But ultimately, one DJ didn't do a very good job of locking up, and that left it all exposed and very easy to access. And I ultimately paid the price, which was late 2012, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was not long after I left in early 2012, so I think it was a bit after that.
Yeah, I still don't remember why you left, Jay. I don't know. Did we?
Do you know what it was?
I remember you had we had something about nothing out in the car park, didn't we? And I was just like,
yeah, but that was a year before.
Was that before that?
Yeah, that was in the old studio.
Okay. I'm getting old, man.
Do you know what it was? That was in the old studio, and you know what I was like, mate. Everyone's got to remember, like a lot of people,
you were heat.
A lot of people didn't like me back then, but people forget I was 22 years old.
I liked you. I thought you were great.
But like that one day, I know exactly what it was.
Character.
I know exactly where it was back then. It was at that time that you said you were doing part-time work on the side as well as radio. You'd had a shit day, and I didn't take it into account. And what had happened was something. It wasn't the FM.
The mic stopped working.
There was some sort of issue with, and I just like I'd had a shit day. You'd had a shit day, and you came down, and I was like, "Fuck this!" And I walked out the studio, and I was like, "Fuck off, Steve, I'm not interested." And then you came out, and you were like, "No, you fucking listen to me." And then Eamon's got us both, and he's going, "Boys, shut up." And we're going, "Yeah." And but it wasn't that. That wasn't why I left. I left because around the end of 2011, I weighed about 22 stone. And what happened was I said, I was at a time in my life, and I think I've spoken about this before, but I'm always open about this stuff. Like I was at a time in my life where no matter what was going on, I felt like something would hold me back. And even if it wasn't, so like if it was music, I'd feel like, well, because of this or this person, I'm not going to get that far. Or if it was at work, because of this, like, and I needed to find something in my life that only I could achieve and only I could fail at. And I remember I had a deep conversation with John Warren one night, and he said to me, he was like, "Jay, come to the gym with me, listen to what I tell you, and I'll turn you into a fucking beast in a year." And basically, I took on the challenge of, I ended up losing like nearly 7 stone. But what it was I was doing so me and Eamon, we didn't split as such, but he couldn't do the Tuesday anymore. He ended up doing Saturday afternoon, and I did Sunday afternoon just before spending. So the trouble is where I was working 6 days a week and hammering the gym. After a few months, it was like it just got too much. And I remember, and I was living in Bromley, and I was getting a train from Bromley over to Acton every Sunday.
Oh, right. So you were,
because when I was living in Wimbledon at my mates, it was calm. But then when I moved back to Bromley, it was long. So it was a culmination of everything. And I just went, do you know what? Like, I'd had a really crap week. It was that show, and I think I just sort of rang you up, and I was like, Steve, it's probably going to be my last show. And you were like, all right, fair enough. But no, we had our dance in the car park a year or so before that.
I remember that. Yeah, I actually remember what that was about. I think the internet stream, because the internet was feeding the radio.
Yeah,
because it was obviously coming from the internet, it was buffering.
It kept doing all sorts of mad shit.
To keep jumping and leaping, cutting out. Yeah, I know. We all had them bad days, mate. But I'll be honest, like, I may have said that on the phone to you, and I'm sure I probably was a bit more gutted than you've made it sound. But when you left, I was gutted because, like, you and Eamon, are kind of like standouts of, and don't take it as no disrespect because you are good and well-known DJs, but you were like, I saw you guys like really grasp the opportunity, and actually I think in yourselves, and I know it as well, that you probably had one of the best shows on the station in terms of quality control, in terms of presenting right, in terms of, you were on the cusp of almost being like Legal Boys. You had your little segues where, random track from fucking nowhere that just got flung in. And you had, slightly different shows where each, sometimes the second hour would be a completely different format to what you would normally do.
It was the special guests as well that we were getting on. Like, me and Eamon were laughing about. We had FHM model come down, and we had I had a band on there. I had a band come on a Sunday, and I was playing rock music there.
Like, why wasn't I there when all this happened, man? What's going on?
Do you know what was funny, right? I'll tell you a story, and I'll mention a name that is a legendary name from Ice Cold / Image, and he's a lovely fella, but he used to creep me the fuck out sometimes. Man like F Swift.
Oh Christ, F Swift.
So basically,
you know what?
I don't know if it was deliberate, right? But we were coming up to radio to do our 6 till 8, and basically I knew this FHM model, and like I didn't get her on the show because she was I knew her from the manor. Like, I was just mates with her. She was like one of her mates was seeing one of my mates. We all knew each other. So she said to me, "Look, I'm doing this competition, and it's like a live bikini thing at Cafe de Paris. Like, I need people to vote and nominate me." So I was like, "Come on the show. We interview people all the time. Talk about some." She knew a little bit about garage. I was like, "Pick a couple of tracks, come on the show and do an interview." And she ended up winning the fucking thing anyway. So I went and met her with Mocha, right? So me and Mocha met her in Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And then I think it's Mocha anyway. Yeah. And then man, like Kinke. And then we went up and met Eamon, and we went to the radio. Now the funny thing was F Swift had done like the 2 till 4 that day. And he stayed around for the entirety of the 4 till 6.
Did some lurking.
And as she walked in, his eyes went, like when someone's pretending not to look. And then he went, "I'm going home now. I'll see you later. Bye." And he left. And we were like, did he stay here the whole day waiting for her? And it was like,
just to then go by.
Yeah, listener of Pressure said he didn't say a word during their whole show. He was just there.
Really?
So we reckon, Swift, if you're locked in, mate, love you, but that was weird.
bit creepy there. You know what? It's funny because like it's weird because like, even talking to you now, that feels like second nature. But like, I and going off the subject of radio, it's funny how like social interactions and how people can be very different when they're presented in a different situation or what's maybe classified as like socially awkward, or they feel uncomfortable, maybe because it's a beautiful woman in front of them, or maybe because it's a high level stressful job. But like, I know I can still get like that. There's times where like I feel socially awkward.
Yeah.
In situations, even to this day and age. So like, big up Swift, he was probably just in awe of the goddess that was in front of him and just lost his pants. Bless him. But again, that's kind of the stuff that I loved about what you guys did, is that you weren't afraid to just go offbeat and go, well, fuck it, it's something different, which was so needed in a really, and I put my hands up to the stuff, it was becoming a bit stale, and keeping listeners from an FM perspective was tough because the format was dying, and you had the new formats coming through. The onlines were there. Your tune-in radios were kind of like really popular. I think this was all pre-Spotify and all that, but YouTube was definitely starting to, make waves, and the way people consumed not only audio but video content, and it just changed. And although, like, when Image kind of came to an end, which was sad to some extent, actually, it was a kind of fork in the road. It was a pivotal moment for me personally, because if I was still doing that thing and all this shit hadn't happened, I wouldn't have had my kids, my little boy. I probably wouldn't have married my missus. I probably wouldn't have had baby number 2, and I wouldn't be in a position where I am, where I'm probably the most comfortable I've ever been in my entire life. Like, it's been a tough couple of years with all the shit that's gone down in this world. But, like, in the big picture, I can't complain. Like, I've got a nice home, I've got a roof over my head, I've got a decent motor, I've got a lovely family, got money in the bank. So actually, the shit that happened changed the direction for me. Actually, it's given me the best life I could have probably ever asked for. Like, little boy from Acton living in a council house, not really much money. Mum struggling to big up Mumsy, bless her. Struggling to look after me, my little sister, and all that. Like, I'm not saying we had a bad life. My mum gave us everything she possibly could. Like, too much. I remember she bought me a drum kit. Like, every penny she had to buy me, like, the drum kit that I talked about right at the very beginning. So it's funny reflecting, because I was talking to my wife about it, and I actually said to her, if that hadn't happened, if all the shit that had gone down with the station getting broken into and robbed, and then a lot of noise from different people, because everyone was talking shit. Like, Jay, no word of a lie, I had about 75 different versions of why and what had happened based on different people's contacts or who they'd spoken to. And I think, truth be told, 95% of them didn't know if their ass from their ear. But everyone was phoning me going, oh, I've heard it's this person, oh, I've heard it's that person, oh, I've heard it's this, I've heard it's that. I kind of know what happened, and I know what the crack was, and I'm just going to let sleeping dogs lie, because I can't change it, and it was what it was. And actually, it was pivotal to kind of breaking that cycle of being stuck in radio, because I could have easily been that guy still now, trying to slog away doing radio with a dying audience and a changing consumption of how people listen to music. So yeah, everything happens for a reason, in my opinion, and how I look at things. And as sad as it was, because I think there was still a lot to give from when Image, because Image was, when it rebranded, it was probably only a year and a half, but in total stint, I was part of Ice Cold from 2007, 2008 to 2012. So it was a big 5-year chunk of life that was just in that zone, pretty much constantly doing my thing. So yeah, it was sad, but in reflection, it was the best thing to happen, strangely. But yeah, some great times, some really good people, like some great DJs, on there, some great personalities. Some people went on to still do some quite big stuff themselves. Some people are still floating around the scene now and still working pretty predominantly in the scene. Talked about Spinny B earlier on, like, still grafting out there, still doing his thing. And I got a lot of respect for, like, people like Spinny B, just touching on some of the guys I can't remember everyone's name. I was trying to remember all of the DJs that were on the station, but we did go through quite a lot of people over the time. And I think at one point, when we were 7 days, we were doing 7 days a week, I had 65, 70 DJs on the station. So it's hard to remember everyone's name in looking back.
Do you know someone who's really killing it now, finally, and it's richly deserved? Wes Wint.
Yes, he's doing it. Is that Soul Fusion? Is it Soul?
He's signed. He's had tracks out on. So Sai says he was on episode 1. Who runs Raising Records. He's had tracks out with him. He's had, like, Louis Vega's been playing his music. Like, he's really finally being recognised for the producer he is.
Wicked. Well, you know what? Wes is a good one to call out, because Wes was a good guy. There was so many good guys in that station, and I feel bad that I can't remember them all. But it's 10 years ago, and so much has happened, and things have changed. But there was some really, really great people in there. Some good DJs, and I have fond memories of it. But it came to an end. It was fun. And like saying, you saying yourself, it was pivotal to your life and did a lot for your career is enough for me to take away from it and say, well, it did something, even if it's just for you. It did something for someone, and that's in itself is done me happy, done me proud. I think they definitely had more potential. I think there was still life in the old dog there still, but I think it would have been a much harder battle. And I've looked at pirate radio now, looking at it now, and it's dead. Like radio, just shit. I'll say sorry to all the pirates that are still out there now, but you all just sound like you're just bored in your bedrooms. Like most stations I listen to, apart from Select, which was doing really well, and like Point Blank. But even Point Blank seems to have lost that spirit that was made it really different, and it doesn't really get out anymore.
They've got a DAB license now as well.
Fair play to them, well done. So all of these stations that are moving to that, that's great. But I don't go into town very often now, so I'm not even in London anymore. I'm miles away. I still occasionally go into town and I flick through the dial and it's just dry. It's pretty boring. And I just put on my DAB and I actually listen to Centre Force pretty much most of the time if I'm in the car, because it sounds like it's an older people station, if you know what I mean. It gives me a lot of memories of the older music. Or I'm just banging out drum and bass, pissing everyone off in the countryside. So like I say, it's been nice to have a chat about it all. There are some stories that we should have probably talked about, but we haven't. Like Natty Baseline, who I thought had died in the studio. That was a story. So I got phone calls, like text messages. I don't even know who from, but I think it was from a listener. I think it was Facebook pings. I went on my phone. And then Natty was on the radio. It just went quiet, just stopped, and all you could hear was, which was the record had finished. Yeah. And it's just been, and like they text me saying it's just been clicking for 15 minutes and there's been no noise. And all we heard was like click, click, click. So I've got up 2 a.m, right? It was seriously late because Natty used to love doing them grade last shifts. I've gone down the studio and I'm like, the people that text me like really worried about him. Like, I mean, they were like, please go down and make sure he's all right. Funny story though, I still remember this one because I got to the studio and it was in the one, the back, the nice one, no electrification. And I went in through the door and I've taken my baseball bat, because I'd always had a baseball bat in the car, because I was like, maybe something else has happened. It's 2 a.m. and I'm in there and I'm actually being quite cautious. So I'm on my Jack Jones. It's 2 a.m. Like I'm crusty-eyed as it is, and I'm like, right, fucking just in case. I go through the door and I swear to God, right, I opened, do you remember the metal door, the big metal one that Daryl Ridge put on for us? So I swung that open and I swear to God, Natty Baseline is on the floor like that. Like not moving. And I swear to God, I thought he was dead. I kicked him. And then I was like, the baseball bat, I was like, Natty. And even I was like, fucking hell, he's died. Natty was a great guy, but he had challenges. And sometimes things got the better of him where he would choose the wrong path. I don't know, like I said, I don't talk badly of anyone, but he would succumb to the temptation. And I honestly thought, fuck, he's died in the studio. And honestly, I almost had to thump him in the stomach. You know, like when boxers train and they're getting the ball whacked in their stomach and they're like, more. I literally had to go like that. And he jumped up like a ravaged beast. Like he jumped up and he went for me. But he was 30 seconds before, he was dead, in my opinion. He was out cold. He leapt up and he was like, rah! And I was like, Natty, calm down. And I'm like, I'll lick him. Like he's one of my DJs, but if he comes at me, he's going to get swung. But I'm stepping back out of that metal door because I'm like, I don't really want to whack someone around the head who's, just been what feels like unconscious on the floor. I may actually kill him. And I stepped back, and I remember, you remember the other little room that was kind of the pre-room?
Yeah.
It was kind of just all the shit was dumped there. I fell back over something, and I kind of almost lost my balance, and I thought, fucking, he's going to go for me. So I did take a swing, and then I think in a bit of an instance, he realised who I was. It took him a few seconds, and then he literally reached out his hand, and he went from raging beast to, oh man, Steve, sorry, mate. I was like, what the fuck's wrong? He just had too much to drink, and he'd just fallen asleep on the decks. So I honestly thought I'd lost a man. I put a man down, and it was like 2 a.m, and the listeners, and all of this time you can hear the record click, 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 click. And yeah, that was a really funny story. I won't name the DJ because don't want to dig anyone out, but there was some explicit stuff going down in the green room. Do you remember the green room? That was another room behind our room, which was a big room.
Yeah.
So there was, yeah, I went in, I came down there one time. I think I was coming back from like a gig or something, and I just wanted to pop in just to sanity check. And I think the DJ that had done the last set, and I'm not going to dig out anyone, but he was in there roasting some chick in the green room at like 2 a.m. And I walked in there and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? This ain't a fucking brothel. And the poor girl, like, she was like a rabbit caught in the headlights. And I didn't want to like make her feel uncomfortable. So I said, look, get the fuck out. And then I don't think that DJ came back. I don't think they did actually. Because I was like, that's just a liberty. It's like, it's not a place to be bringing birds back. So there was loads of them kind of stories that happened all the time. You know, getting locked out of tower blocks was a massive one where I climbed the scaffolding. So do you remember the blocks? I might have told you, but the tower blocks. So it was near the end. So it was like 2011, 2012. The tower blocks, they refurbished them completely.
Yeah.
And they covered the whole thing with scaffolding. And they changed the locks on the roof because the workmen that were the only people that were supposed to be getting there. I scaled the outside scaffolding of that block to get in. And then I tried to get the lock out. So I got to the top just to switch the rig back on because they switched the rig off. But the rig, I knew the rig was still there because I knew the caretaker of the block. And he was like, I know it's still up there, everything's still there, but they've just secured the site. So I went back there a couple of weeks later and the lift man was there again. And he was so shook that I was like trying to get in the block. He just gave me the key and fucked off. He left. He didn't actually go and service the lift. So the poor people in that block had no one lift for 21 stories, which only served odd and even floors each lift. And he saw me there. I was chiseling away with it. Just anything. I was like, I'm getting in here. It's the last thing I'd do. And yeah, he came up and he walked in. He saw me there, like smashing it out, all the tools, the bags, everything. And he just went, there you go, mate, and turned around and walked off and just gave me the key. I was just like, touch, sweet. Go get a couple of them cuts. He got some spares. Like so many crazy little stories. And I was like, you know, I think a lot of people say Ricky was like, I was a single. I used to go by myself. I didn't need no one to go and sit up on the rooftops for me. I would be up there on my Jack Jones, throwing up dipoles, plumbing rigs down chutes and setting everything up, and then shooting back to the block or wherever I was to link up and get it on. Loved that shit. Pissing rain, wind, hail, sweating in the heat, being caught by the police and pretending that you're stargazing. Mate, done it all. Lived and breathed it.
Did we? I don't really remember it happening, either that or it was just the fact that you were on it that much. But did we go off that much around that time period where we were proper booming?
No, so that's one of the things. Like,
because I feel like we were quite lucky. I feel like we actually done all right.
So I had I think it was like the second rig or something like that. I put up. It was so the rig was up there for so long, Jane, right? That I had this funky area. It's called like it's not a Slim Jim. It was called a 5/8 wave. So you can, I won't get too technical, but different aerials will give you kind of different broadcast paths in terms of how they'll get their signal out. You've got a traditional double stack, which is just basically like it tries to send it to the horizon, and you've got different types of aerials. So anyway, I had this aerial that was specially made, but I didn't get the right one. So there was different scales of the aerial. At the time, I just bought the standard one, but I was putting 300 watts into it. And what was happening is that rig had been up there for 9 months, and I could notice because I was always driving around. So always on the road, like here, there, and everywhere, checking out, going out with my mom, putting posters up in Vauxhall and everything like that. And I could notice that the signal was starting to get a little bit, and that vexed me. Like I was like, nah. And what had happened is that that rig had been on for so long, and I had the wrong specification of air. It was the right air, it just wasn't powerful enough. It had killed the rig. So the rig was slowly dying a death, but was still always on. And that rig stayed on there for 9 months without being touched. So I swapped that rig over and put a 200, 300 watt up there. Fucking massive thing. Big up M. I'm not going to say his name, but he built some rigs for us. And mate, they were like safes. They were like this big, really long things, and they had 2 pallets, PA pallets, and 2 transmitter pallets in them. So it was mad how he built them, but they were really, really fucking big, like twice the size of a normal rig. And I stuck a 300 watt, and that was the one that they switched off when they were doing the refurbishment. And I got back up there, like I say, scaling it and turned it back on, but I couldn't get the lock out, so I just left it on, and it stayed on. But then they came to reseal all of the air vents, because I'd have to rip the air vent open, obviously, to get. And they were doing a complete refurb of the block, so sprinkler systems, doors, locks, windows, painting. It was a complete revamp. So they resealed all of the air vents. So but the rig was still down there. So as soon as they finished the other block, I hopped onto the other block, ripped the air vent straight back open, and stuck another rig down there. And then when they finished the other block, which was actually the rig when I finished up, they're probably going to hate me for saying this now, but that rig that I gave to After Six and that nut when they took over and started doing London Live for a while, which was a shame they never actually did more with that. Big guide for them, because it was still a good opportunity to do some stuff. I actually went up onto the block and unjacked that rig. I ripped the vent open again and took the rig out. So I think in the whole time that I did image from like 2008, Ice Cold Image to 2012, in 4 years, I think I went through 5 rigs.
That's pretty good going.
5 rigs. But you know what it is, Joe, is the thing is, and again, I think it was BQs. I have listened to all the BQs one. I wanted to take the piss in terms of 500 watts, putting them big boys up, yeah. But I also knew that if you take the piss, you bring the heat. You bring the heat, you come to an end. So it's like, it's just the good and the bad of like, put the 500 watt up, you know, it's like, what's his name? Old Dapper Laughs in the sesh. Go on, do it. No, don't do it. You know, sesh. Like, put the 500 watt up. Go on, do it. You'll bang out. Now put the 350 on, stay on, be on. I stick the 500 watt up. I always pivoted towards I'd rather be on and stay on than bang out the coverage. Some people may have said that just put the 500 watt on, but they were expensive rigs, man. 500 watts were like, they were 600-700 bills a time. So they came at a premium. But I used to put them up like Christmas, big events, used to just switch, because I had both blocks. I could go to either or. I used to just switch the 300 watt off of that one and switch the 500 on. Or if I was getting a bit of heat, because I actually had DTI meet me at the bottom of the block once when I think it was a run up to the Lavish hidden one. And I think they come to take us off. They actually said, don't take the piss because we will fuck you. And they pretty much said that. They were pretty straight, but I never took the piss with the Ofcom. I played the game with them. Like, if they said, give us the rigs or just mind what you're doing, I would take their advice, because ultimately they will come for you if they really want to take you out of the game. They will come hard. And we've seen that happen. I know BQ was talking about it, where when their time came, they went in and they bent them over without lube and fucked them. And it's very easy for that to happen. And again, so I kind of always kind of tried to play the game with them and stay on the good side of them, because I felt it gave me a better opportunity to stay on. So like, you know, yeah, I just ride it out. And it was a shame, like I say, really ultimately, it was a shame that it came to an end. And I had so many stories about why it happened, but ultimately the studio got robbed just because it wasn't locked up properly. It was, and again, I'm not going to go into it, but it kind of inside job, to be honest. Someone who I trusted had taken advantage of that and knew the ways to get around the cameras and ways into the building that you'd only know if you were in the circle, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was what it was. Shame, because I think there was so much more potential still there. But actually, in reflection, perfect time for it to go, because the radio listenership was diving fast. It was online media was really taking precedent of on demand. You can have what you want when you want it. You don't have to wait till 6 o'clock on a Tuesday night to listen to Jada Buddha and Mr. E, or, you know, Martin Lyon on a Saturday night, or Spinny B on a Saturday afternoon, or Midget Man and Brazil on a Sunday morning, or whoever was on ever. You could have them whenever you wanted. And that started to pivot. So I think, again, you know, getting out and walking away from it was the right thing to do, because I think I would have been fighting a losing battle in trying to keep it big, because it was going that way. So yeah, I look back in it all and I don't have any regrets really, Jay, to be honest. Some people say you should have turned it back on, and you know, I spoke to a few people at the time saying, "Fuck it, Steve, just crack on." And I just thought, nah, I'm good. I had other things going on, start a family, you know, wanted to think about settling down a bit more, and yeah, I just thought, you know what, let it go. And like I say, Arthur and Nut at the time were kind of wanted to keep it going, so I kind of just let them take it. I said, look, you know, give us some dough for the rigs I've got left and some of the kit, just so I'm covering the cost of the stuff that I'm letting you have, and do your thing. I think they took it over in, they started London Live in what, 2013, was it?
Yeah, about then, yeah.
Get it time. Yeah. And yeah, I'll be honest, I think I went on there once or twice just to do a couple of shows, just because I still held Nut out. Like, I think I even went up on the block with him a couple of times to get it back on when he was having struggles. He used to meet me in the Witherspoons up the road from the block. We just sit there and get drunk and then go on the roof and fix up. But yeah, and it never really took off. I don't know what happened there, because they had everything they needed, in my opinion, to continue it and keep a strong listenership. But you need to have love for this game. Like, you need to be in it. Like, you can't be half-hearted about radio, because if you're half-hearted, you're doomed to fail.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and that's the story, man. Yeah, 10 years later, it's like a 10-year itch, isn't it?
Oh, before we finish up, I'll tell you the story. I don't know if you remember this one.
I've done 3 hours.
Yeah, you have. I'll tell you the story, right? Did I ever tell you the story about when me and Greg Brazil got death threats on air?
I'm sure you did, actually. I'm sure you did.
So what happened was, right, basically, do you remember around about 2011, 2012, there was a woman, right, who got killed, and a family found her body when they were out walking their dog on Christmas Day. And basically, she'd been killed by a Dutch fella named Vincent Tabak. And all the headlines read were that he'd murdered her, and the pizza that she'd bought in the supermarket that evening was missing. So it was like this whole big thing about, why did he take the pizza? So anyway, me being the prick that I am, I've gone on to radio, and me and Brazil, Brazil used to do the 12 till 2 and I did the 2 till 4. So if for whatever reason, Midget Man was just off at that point, he just weren't around. So I always used to turn up a little bit early, and I'd go there, and we used to do this thing called a 10-minute takeover. And I would take over on the mic at the end of Brazil's set, and we'd basically turn the music off and just chat shit and make each other laugh.
Yeah.
That's how we became really, really good friends, and still are to this day. Is that banter that we built there. So again, another great thing that came out of Ice Cold and Image. So we were there doing the 10-minute takeover, and we were telling jokes, and I turned around to Greg Brazil, and this stuff was all in the headlines at the time. And I went to him, he goes, "Oh, so what you been up to?" I went, "Oh yeah, I went on a date last night." And he went, "Oh yeah." I said, "Yeah." She said she wanted to go Dutch, so I strangled her and took her pizza. Like, he's like,
didn't.
so he's fallen on the floor laughing his bollocks off. Anyway, I've
Jay.
started my show. And Greg's still sticking around because he's like, I ain't got nothing to do. I'll stick around for a bit. So I'm doing my show and we're talking, and we're getting text messages going, that's fucking out of order. You can't say that. And I'm like, look, if anyone's offended, I'm not apologizing. So then I've got a phone call and I've got it on loudspeaker. I've got it on a loudspeaker by the mic, and the geezer's gone, you can't say things like that. That girl's dead. And I'll fucking make sure you're dead. And I'm like, yeah, but she's dead. She ain't gonna hear it, is she? See you later. I put the phone down, and it was literally like, but we kept taking it to a whole nother level. And other people, like the majority of people, were going, "This is hilarious! Like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard." But then there's like 3 or 4 people, I can't believe you said it. Like, mate, to this day, I will never forget the look on Greg's face when I turned around and actually said the joke. My dad was driving in West London.
I'm still shocked now.
My dad was driving in West London at the time. He said he had to pull over just off the Hammersmith flyover because he was laughing so much. He had tears coming out of his face. Like, mate, yeah, that was a special one. The other time was we were talking about, we were going to Southport weekend and me in Brazil, and we used to, sometimes we'd camp it up a bit when we'd speak to each other. Yeah. So at one point we said we were going Southport weekender, and I used to be Gay J, and I did it a couple of times to wind up other DJs and that. Like, I remember Al B came in the studio once and he'd never met me before, and Eamon was standing next to me, and I think we've still got the recording. And I went to him. Oh, look, I was on the mic at the time, and Eamon's like, yep, I'll be up next. Who's this big bald man that's come in the studio? Look at his tattoos. I started going like this. I used to do it quite a lot. And but I was doing it with Greg Brazil. We were talking about going away for the weekend.
That's what I love about you, Jay.
Mate, we were talking about going away for the weekend, and I said, yeah, can't wait to get away, with Edward and Tarquin and Quentin as well. And then I went, and then Greg was like, yeah, I can see it now. All of us all together. Oh, where'd you get your shirt from? And I went, yeah, I do like your shorts. And then Greg went, what's that hamster for? And I lost it. I just fucking lost it. But we used to do stuff like that every single week. And because we had that sense of humor where we would just take it to horrible levels, but it just went off like every week. People would be like, can't wait for the 10-minute takeover. Can't wait for the 10-minute takeover.
Well, I suppose, that's the 10-minute takeover is a classic example of where you can utilize pirate radio to just be out there. Yeah. Because there is no to be honest, on reflection, I probably wouldn't have been happy if I'd heard it myself. And I'm sure I did hear you do you camp it up guy. I'd have probably be on the phone saying, Jay, for fuck's sake, you're gonna get us all in trouble here. But you seem like you've mellowed a lot more yourself now, but you just didn't give a fuck, which is, there's nothing wrong with actually. Because if you give a fuck, you'd just be held back by everyone. So just do you. And I'm glad you would say Al B. You mentioned Al B there. I just remember he was a sick little DJ. Yep. He was a good little DJ, and I remember he was not just good at garage. He was really good at old school as well. He had a great old school selection. I used to love listening to some of his shows. There were so many good DJs on there. So like I say, it was a shame that it came to an end, but it was what it was, and it was a really cool part of, or a big part of my life, and a lot of people's in terms of DJs that came through that. I don't think there was, especially from the garage scene anyway, there wasn't really anyone that didn't pass through at some stage or didn't want to come and do a show, because it was the one in West London. There was nothing really touching it. Maybe a bit, like I say, retrospect could have lived a little longer, but hey.
Mate, it's a big part of history. It's a big part of my history. And I'm so happy you were able to come on and talk about it. And, we have done a little bit less time than Henny. And me and Henny spoke for an hour after the fucking podcast. So trust me, we ain't doing that.
I'm definitely going to do that tonight, because I've got 6 a.m. get up, mate. So, it's been a pleasure, mate. And I feel like I've gone a little bit up to and fro and probably missed some really funny stories about radio along the way. But maybe we can do a part 2.
Mate, 100%. 100%.
Maybe we could I know Henny was talking about doing a documentary. He's asked me to.
He's already
say a few words there.
He's already filming, mate. So hopefully, there's a few little side projects I'll talk to you about briefly before after I've stopped the recording. But yeah, hopefully we'll run into each other around that particular campfire. But if not, mate, it's been a real pleasure and a privilege to reminisce and hear your full story as well. Going from someone who pissed off the neighbours with a drum kit to someone who pissed off every single council in West London with pirate radio. So well done.
I did. I rinsed them. Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, mate, and an honour as well. You've had some esteemed calibre of people on here, so it's nice to be part of it. Well done on this. I wish you every success with this, mate. I think it's a great thing. So just keep doing it.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that, mate.
It's been a pleasure, mate.
Episode number 21 of the Over the Hill podcast. Special guest Steve Williams is a wrap. Don't forget, you can subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn, Google, YouTube, Castbox, all the regular places. Leave your 5-star reviews on iTunes. That's the best place to leave the reviews. Gives wicked feedback and it bumps us further up the charts. Get in touch with the show, the Over the Hill podcast at gmail.com. But until next time, big up Steve Williams. We're out. Peace.